Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey now, welcome to another edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily, a lovely Wednesday following a Winnipeg Jets win over the Montreal Canadiens 4-1 last night. So much to discuss. Michael Remis in the host chair for Hustler, who's in Costa Rica. Maybe we'll be popping in on video recording at some point in the show. We'll wait and see. Stay tuned. Connor Hrabchak will be joining me shortly with the Jets takes, and got some great guests lined up. David Pagnotta from the fourth period has his trade watch list. Ken Wiebe of the Winnipeg Free Press was in Montreal last night for the game, and John Hodge on the Bombers, and Leighton Janis in chat. What's going on, everyone? He says 2 hours of talking about what a wagon the Jets are. Good plan. Yeah, I mean, how great are the Jets? That was certainly the topic yesterday. How great is this power play? And I thought we were in for another game from the first period yesterday, similar to last week against Utah, where they had a slow first period, but they were able to pick it up and come out with the win with a dominant second and third period. Before I bring in Connor, shout out to our sponsors: Rollies Transfer, Manitoba Battery, Princess Auto, Canadian Club, Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, Fans First, Little Brown Jug, Boston Pizza, Royal Sports, the Winnipeg Jets, and Coolbet. And a couple sponsor notes. We're giving away Manitoba Moose tickets on our website, winnipegsportstalk.com/contest to enter. WST night at the Jets game with winnipegjets.com/WST. That is February 7. Royal Sports has their exclusive Jets hats out. Check out our Instagram, Sports Talk WPG, for the picture of that. We've got the whiskey tasting coming up. Stay tuned. Mark on your calendar. We will sign up for a mailing list. Link in the description or on our website. February 27, we will email everyone when the tickets come available. And it's poker night on Coolbet. Lockshot Poker Series, 9 p.m. tonight Central Time. Link in the description. I think I got through everything there. I'll bring in Connor Hrabchak. What's going on, Connor? How about that game last night? Winnipeg Jets defeating the Montreal Canadiens 4-1 at the Bell Center.
Yeah, that was a great game. Started out slow, like you said, for the Jets, and Scott O'Neill even said that after the fact, that the first 10 minutes weren't great, but boy, did they ever bounce back. They played great in that second, great in that third. Connor Hrabchak kept them in it early when maybe they were struggling. And I think you could really tell that Montreal, you interviewed Sean Starr yesterday, and he said they had their first 2-day break in a long time. You could tell in that first period that they were energized. They had that rest. They had that extra day of practice, and they came out firing. But the Jets responded. Big game from the top line, as we've come accustomed to at this point. 2 goals from Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele with a goal. They're both tied in the NHL goal scoring lead for second place. David Gustafsson with a big primary assist. It was a great game with a lot of storylines to attack it from.
Entertaining game, and I was getting ready to come here today and saying, hey, everyone knows first game on the road after a homestand, right? That's coming out rusty. I was like, oh, what's Arneal going to say after this? But the Jets really, I don't know what was said in the dressing room after the first period. I mean, you're outshot 10-3 in the first 10 minutes. Hrabchak is doing what he normally does. He stops the puck, although they are down 1-0. But they're able to get on the board. Dylan DeMello, we saw him score that big goal at home against Seattle. I mean, just gets a shot on net after some great puck possession by Mark Scheifele, and Kyle Connor picks up a rebound and in. But I think the game really turned when it looked like a really harmless dump in by Kyle Connor in the dying seconds of the second period. But it was the Gus Bus, David Gustafsson, getting in hard on the forecheck. That's why they say play to the whistle, and gets it to Kyle Connor in the slot, and he just buried it. And that, I don't know, I don't want to say that was the game, but really gave the Jets their first lead, and they didn't give it up.
Yeah, that was a massive goal because there was, half a second left in the second period, and that put the Jets up 3-1. And there are so many layers to this goal that I love. The first part of it is Dan Robertson, who had a great call last night on TSN with Kevin Sawyer. The puck gets dumped in, and Dan Robertson is almost transitioning to the intermission. He's like, so I think the Jets are pretty content with that second period. And then he's like, oh, wait, we got a chance here. And then David Gustafsson makes a great play on the wall. That's the big part of this. He gets it on the forecheck, outmuscles Caden Gooley, gets the puck on his stick, and fires a great pass right in the shooting pocket for Kyle Connor, one-timer goal. And that was really the dagger at that point. Jets go up 3-1, 2-goal lead going into the third against Connor Hrabchak. You're not going to lose many of those games. And yeah, David Gustafsson, I mean, what a play from him. And the last part of this goal that I love, and I don't know if people notice this, but Kyle Connor scores, and we've seen it how many times from Kyle Connor. Incredible release, incredible goal, one-timer from the slot. Dylan DeMello looks at Kyle Connor to celebrate the goal and then immediately turns and goes to David Gustafsson. So he's like skating away from Kyle Connor, who's celebrating the goal, going to the wall, going down on one knee, big celebration. Dylan DeMello's so excited for what David Gustafsson just did that he turns away from Kyle Connor and goes and celebrates with David Gustafsson. That was the biggest play of the game. Right at the end of the second period. And from a player who's only in the lineup because Adam Lowry is out of it week to week, he's sure making the most of it. He's got four points in his last 4 games.
Absolutely incredible. David Gustafsson played 13-17 last night. And it's amazing when you look at the ice time distribution, how even it was. Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor led all forwards. Scheifele 18-39, Connor 19-36. I imagine that additional shift was the one at the end of that second period. But Gustafsson 13-17. Barron, he laid a big hit there on Kirby Dach. 12-10, really earning the Bear nickname. Rasmus Kupari had a really nice chance early and did bury the empty netter 14-15. I follow 14 minutes. So it's amazing how even this distribution was. And you had guys contributing on all the lines. But it was that top line. Notable, we talked so much about the power play coming in 0 for 3 on the power play. But, hey, I mean, if you're calling the Jets top line, hey, they can only get it done on the power play. You saw, all the goals there at even strength. And I forgot to mention that pass from Gabriel Velarde to Mark Scheifele. So that top line. And how about this, Connor? I dug up these numbers. Since December 4, when they announced the Four Nations rosters, the top 13 in scoring, you have Kyle Connor at 5th with 36 points, Gabriel Velarde at 10th with 32 points, and Mark Scheifele in 13th at 30 points. So, I mean, this top line really, since, all season, but especially since the beginning of December, one of the top lines of the NHL. And I should note, if you want to see Mark Scheifele and Team Canada, Sam Bennett, 6 points, and Anthony Cirelli, another 6 points. So Mark Scheifele, more than double those two guys combined. But what an incredible unit that has been on the power play and on even strength.
Yeah, they've been solid. They've been pretty up and down, but when they're up, they are soaring high and no one can stop them, right? Gabriel Velarde now has 6 points in his last 2 games. He had a 4-point night on Sunday afternoon against the Flames, or Sunday late evening, or late afternoon, early evening, I should say, against the Calgary Flames. And then they followed it up. Gabe Velarde, that pass to Mark Scheifele on his goal was awesome. Mark Scheifele quieting the crowd because they were booing him all night long, every time he touched the puck, from the Jake Evans thing many years ago. So yeah, it was a great night from the top line, and they did it at 5-on-5, like you said, and they'll only get credit as a line for 2 of the 5-on-5 goals because David Gustafsson was on the ice for Kyle Connor's second goal. But that line did contribute 3 5-on-5 goals. And you talk about since December 4th, that's a benchmark I've been using as well, not only for the Four Nations and looking at points and stuff, but also for this Jets team. That's kind of when they emerged from that brutal schedule, the injuries that they were going through. Nikolai Ehlers and Dylan Sandberg were out. And since December 4th, they're 17-6-3, which is second best in the NHL over that time, or tied for second best with Washington. Both of those teams trail Edmonton. Over that time, 3.5 goals per game, that's second. 2.23 goals against per game, that's third. 6.33 5-on-5 goal share. Yeah, you got the tweet up there. There you go. Their first. 36.5% is their power play since December 4th. So they're just red hot. That's obviously first in the NHL over that time. And then the expected goal share, 54% as well, which is 8th. So this Jets team, a lot of people liked the narrative that they were off to a hot start and then were mediocre since then. well, I know we're nitpicking and we're taking out the worst stretch of the season, but if you take in the injury to Sandberg, the injury to Ehlers, the schedule, since then they've bounced back and they've proven once again that they're one of the best teams in the league. And Montreal was one of the best teams in the NHL over the last month and a half, and they just went on the road and beat them without Adam Lowry. So that was a pretty impressive win last night, and it just put a stamp on how good this team has been playing since the start of December.
Yeah, I was talking to someone who covers the Canadiens. They messaged me this morning and said, man, the Jets are a wagon. People are certainly noticing around the league. How can you not? First place, another win. They're off today and moving on to Boston on Thursday. Here, let's hear from Scott Arniel, his thoughts on the game. Here he is talking about just getting back in the game after a slow start and really finding Winnipeg Jets hockey.
Describe how you guys stabilized after a bit of a rocky start. Maybe.
Yeah, the first 10 minutes, Montreal came out really hard and had us on our heels, and we spent a lot of time in our end of the rink. But you know what? We finally got back and got playing our game. We did a better job getting through the neutral zone and got our forecheck going. And at the end of the day, that was pretty much what turned that second period around. We got pucks in and got after them and created the zone time and got them on the heels. It wasn't real clean and crisp in the third, but at the end of the day, we did what we needed to do. And slow start, but we grabbed the hold of the game.
Slow start, grabbed a hold of the game, stuck to the game plan, even though things weren't going so well early on. We were able to come out with a win. And we talked a lot about David Gustafsson. Here's Scott Arniel on his forecheck that led to Kyle Connor's goal to make it 3-1.
So when we're on our game, our forecheck is one of our strengths, and we hem teams in, we get in and turn pucks over, and that was a great example. Gus just run that one down, and obviously KC with that shot. It just that was that's a tough one for them to have to with 1.5 seconds left. Big one for us.
I mean, two great examples of Kyle too, right? He doesn't need a lot of time.
Yeah, we've seen that, right? That shot. That's like I said. I've been around seen a lot of good shooters, guys at quick release, but he's in the top 5 for me of some of the best at shooting that puck.
Kyle Connor. I'm sure a lot of people will be waking up to Kyle Connor at the Four Nations when he's representing Team USA. Connor Hrabchak as well. If you didn't know about his greatness, Connor Hrabchak will be. I don't know if this is going to be like a coming out party, but I feel like being in Winnipeg, maybe you don't get the national media attention. However, looking at the goals, Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele tied for second with Sam Reinhart, 6 goals behind Leon Draisaitl. Pretty incredible stuff there from the top line.
Yeah, and a lot of that has come from the power play being so elite this year, right? Like both Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele, since they're at 29 goals, are on pace for, I believe, 45. Mark Scheifele's career high is 42. Kyle Connor's career high is 47. So both players are, Scheifele's on pace to beat it. Connor's on pace to come just short, but they're both vying for their career highs. And I think Scheifele has 8 goals in the power play. Kyle Connor has 9. So that power play and the goals and success that's coming from it has contributed greatly to their overall stats, and the top line being red hot as of late as well, putting up these video game numbers these last 2 games and really carrying the Jets offense. They've been really impressive. And Mark Scheifele, through the booze last night, through some tough coverage where he got his goal, it was a really strong game from him.
It was impressive. Just on the setup for the Connor's first goal, just how he protects the puck, he uses his big body, he carries it. And you mentioned the booze. I'll be honest, maybe I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was like, oh, they're still on this? This is still a thing?
I get it, though. I get it.
I guess if it was happened here, right. Jake Evans is still on Montreal. I'm sure one of the few players from that team. I don't know. It seemed like it's been a while since then. Mark Scheifele's a top player. He doesn't deserve those boos, right? It's not some goon out there. Anyway.
Well, no, I get it. I mean, I think if it happened, if the roles were reversed, Winnipeg fans would be booing Jake Evans like crazy every time they were here, right? So I get it.
I'll use the classic line from Superbad: "People don't forget." And here's Mark Scheifele on dealing with the boos.
You don't even really hear it, to be honest. This is it's a fantastic rink to play in. Obviously a lot of history, with the Canadiens. So It's you kind of drown it out. Once in a while, if there's no pressure on you and you hear it a little bit, you laugh a little bit. But obviously, it's just it was a fantastic win by us, and move on to the next one.
Move on to the next one. You laugh. Mark Scheifele saying all the right things. Cole Sawchuk saying in the chat, I'm still rattled over the suspension. I think when you look at the 4 games that he got and all the suspensions since, I don't know, 4 games seemed excessive at the time, and I think the point has been proven. But we're trying not to get mad about it here. We're trying to enjoy the Winnipeg Jets 4-1 win. Exactly. The Winnipeg Jets first place team as they try to lock down the Central Division banner. We are on, record watch with Mark Scheifele. I don't know if you saw this, Connor, but Mark Scheifele, he's 2 goals away from the franchise, that is Jets Thrashers franchise record for goals, passing great Ilya Kovalchuk. And that's just what it is. The NHL Guide and Record Book. Hey, they deleted that tweet. Oh my God. So 2 away from passing Ilya Kovalchuk. However, I did note that he's actually 53 away from catching Dale Hrabchak. And, we saw the all-time point totals when Ehlers got his 500. It's not something you look at regularly, but Scheifele putting up some all-time career numbers, and a number of players have been long-time Jets. Go down in the best players in team or franchise history, whichever one you want to go by.
Yeah. What's your favorite Ilya Kovalchuk goal in a Winnipeg Jets uniform, Remo? That's why we got to go by the real list, the Dale Hrabchak list. I do think that that's really cool, and there will be a lot made of that, as there should be when Mark Scheifele hits that. What is he, 2 goals away?
He's 2 goals away, yeah.
2 goals away. Yeah, so, and 53 goals away from Dale Hrabchak, excuse me. He'll probably hit that next season as well, and a big deal should be made of that as well. As he's said many times, that's his hockey idol, coached him growing up. So I do think that both of these records do hold weight, even though the records haven't really transferred. We know here in Winnipeg that Dale Hrabchak's the all-time Winnipeg Jets goals leader, even if the record book doesn't say that. And even though Mark Scheifele is going to pass someone who never played a game in a Winnipeg Jets uniform, that's still incredibly impressive for a guy who's going to spend likely his whole career here in Winnipeg.
Yeah, I would like them to acknowledge, say, Winnipeg NHL team, but it is what it is. And Rob Mahoney notes Dale Hrabchak, Utah HC legend. No. Utah HC, that's a new franchise in the eyes of the official guide and record book. Coyotes became inactive. Utah started fresh. So, hey, just some notes from that game. Caden Gooley went into the boards awkwardly and left with an injury. Frank Cervelli noting 5 minutes ago he had a lacerated quadricep muscle, which was surgically repaired. Quick work there. He was released from the hospital today and will be out indefinitely. That sounds bad. So I'm wishing him the best in his recovery. A young defenseman for Montreal, who helps, has been a contributor in their lineup. Here's Kyle Connor on rebounding after that slow start and, being able to stick to their game.
Just played our game. Yeah, definitely a slower start than we wanted, but, we simplified it to the neutral zone and just kind of support each other more. Talked on our breakouts and just made a couple adjustments. And, once we got rolling, playing an offensive zone, you can see the type of damage we can create.
So you say you certainly didn't give up much in the last 2 periods. Something you guys have taken a lot of pride in all year, I guess, right?
Yeah. Our defensive zone structure is, our defensive game all around is kind of been our bread and butter. You can always fall back on it when things aren't going well. It's, we're always in a game when we play that way. And, we had to lean on it a little bit in the beginning. And then, even at the end when they were pressing, we just had to, simplify it a little bit and bear down and make some plays.
Bear down and make some plays. And, Kyle Connor noted their defensive game, Connor, and that's something that you pointed out earlier this year in your WST deep dive on Kyle Connor. What have you seen from his two-way game this year that makes him such an improved player?
Yeah, the thing you notice the most with Kyle Connor's defensive play is the back checking, right? You see that speed, you see him flying back into the defensive zone. But one thing that we touched on with the deep dive is he's playing this defensive style of hockey. He's more engaged defensively. He's back checking, and that's not only leading to instant offense, but it's not taking away from Kyle Connor's offense either. He's still on pace to be right around his career high in goals. That top line is playing great. The power play is over 30%, right? So he's contributing more defensively and maybe more mindful of tracking back and playing in the defensive zone and stealing pucks in the neutral zone. And that's not affecting his world-class offense. And that's the biggest thing with Kyle Connor. I used an example in that video from a game earlier in the year. I don't know if people remember Gabe Vilardi's first goal of the year in Seattle. Kyle Connor back checks right at the blue line, steals the puck off of Oliver Bjorkstrand, gets it to Scheifele right to Vilardi, and it ends up in the back of the net. But that play doesn't happen unless Kyle Connor tracks back and steals the puck inside the blue line and gets it to Mark Scheifele, right? That's maybe where that line struggled last year. They would lose the puck and they wouldn't see it again until they got back on the ice for their very next shift. Now they're losing pucks, but they're getting it back. They're tracking back. They're turning the puck over less. That in turn is resulting in way more offense. And then when you have the power play, I mean, that can just bring you out of any game that you're maybe not playing your best 5-on-5. So Kyle Connor and that entire line doing a lot more this year, tracking back and getting more offense because of it. And their defensive metrics have gone up because of that as well.
Yeah, speaking of defense, you noted this morning on X, Connor, Dylan Samberg. We talked about how big his absence from the lineup. I don't think we realized it, but when he is in the lineup this year, the Winnipeg Jets, 24, 6, and 1. I mean, what is your reaction when you found that number? That's pretty wild right there.
That is pretty wild. I mean, okay, so the first stretch of the season was 17-4 when Samberg was in the lineup. And then right at the start of that 6-game road trip where, I just used the December 4th stat, right in late November is when they started to fall apart a little bit, and I think went 3-7 in 10 games. Samberg got hurt there. They were 17-4 going into that road trip, and then coming out of it, he started playing on January 10th against the LA Kings. The Jets are 7-2-1 since he came back in the middle of January there. So yeah, Dylan Samberg, what he's done this year has been incredible, stepping up into the top 4. He's not only stepped up and taken that role, but he's posting better results than Brendan Dillon ever did here alongside Neil Pionk. Like that second pairing is posting very strong results. They're out-chancing up their opponents. They dominate the expected goals. They're scoring goals. They're suppressing chances. And that's all because of Dylan Samberg. Neil Pionk looks like a better player when Dylan Samberg is on that pairing as opposed to a Hayden Fleury or Logan Stanley or whoever filled in when he was hurt. And that's no coincidence. And as a pending RFA, I don't know, Jacob Stoller, who I do Sunday Live with and writes for Sportsnet, of course, just released an article a day ago, I believe, arguing that the Jets should sign Dylan Samberg long-term, and I don't think anyone would be opposed to that, nor should they be, because Dylan Samberg has been a true stud top 4 defenseman for the Jets and is posting incredible numbers. And yeah, 24, 6-1 with him in the lineup. I know he's not, these maybe the sole reason for their success at both sides of those records, but he's stabilized the second pair and therefore stabilized the top 4, and the Jets look like a much better team with him in the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say Samberg is like the MVP or anything, but really important, to the back of that defense. One player who we can say is the MVP, Connor Hrabchak, solid again. I mean, you can just expect it at this point. He makes saves, he has a good game, and keeps the Jets in it. When give them a chance to find their style. After a slow start. Here's Kyle Connor on Connor Hrabchak's performance last night.
Yeah, I mean, not even the first period, the whole game, he was great. He didn't give him much on the breakaway, even at the end there. And the first period, he stood strong. He's such a calm presence in there, and the game just comes to him. And seems like he's never under duress, no matter how much pressure, how much time in the zone they get, or shots or opportunities. He's he just kind of stands tall in there and plays his game.
Almost take it for granted at this point, Connor. Connor Hrabchak's greatness, his consistency. He hasn't been injured. He just makes saves. It's pretty incredible, and hope for him he can have some playoff success to add to his resume, which on his way, to possibly a third Vezina trophy. And here's a number Dmitry Filipovic put out on X. In 40 games this season, he's given up 0 or 1 goal in 15 of them. Pretty impressive stuff for the man who leads goaltenders, wins, goals against average, save percentage. It's pretty incredible. It's pretty incredible.
It really is. And it's nights like last night where we do take him for granted, almost in a sense, because the Jets had a sleepy first period and bounced back from that. But if Connor Hrabchak wasn't on his A game, that game could have been 2 or 3-0 at the end of the first period, right? The Jets clearly weren't at their best. Kyle Connor did score the goal late, so I guess it would have been 3-1. But the Jets were under siege from the moment that puck dropped. Montreal jumped all over them. They were clearly, like Sean Starr said yesterday, eager from that 2-day rest to have a good start. And Connor Hrabchak kept the Jets in it, allowed them to get back in it. Kyle Connor scored the 1-1 goal. Then the Jets found their game in the second period. And then from that point forward, you don't really talk about Connor Hrabchak as much because the Jets are up 3-1 and they're kind of just shutting things down. But if you go back to the first period, that game would have been so much different if Connor Hrabchak didn't play as well as he did. And that stat, about 15 of his 40 starts, having 1 or 0 goals allowed is incredible. And he's the runaway Vezina trophy favorite, as we've come to know. Should be getting some Hart attention as well, as we've argued on this program. But yeah, Connor Hrabchak, another great game last night, and another game where in the first period he kept the Jets in it, and maybe that's why you see people take him for granted, and even us on this show.
Yes, we'll see what happens Thursday. The Jets off today into Boston. I don't know if we'll see any carryover from their last meeting. I'll talk about that with Ken Wiebe shortly. David Pagnotta of the fourth period coming up. He's got his trade watch list. It's trade watch season, waiting to see what happens there. So, Connor, great chatting with you, and we'll catch up again towards the end of the show.
Yeah, see you later in the show.
There he is. All right, there's Connor Hrabchak. Follow him on X, Connor Hrabchak 1. We'll get to David Pagnotta the fourth period, but first, here's us.
Do you want to thank the great people over at Rolly's Transfer for their support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. Keep an eye out on the roads. The new Rolly's WST truck is out helping Winnipeggers move to their next destination. Hey, Rolly's is family owned and operated and has become the most trusted name in moving in Manitoba over the last 60 years in business. If you've got a move coming up in 2025, get the white glove treatment from Rolly's and get a great deal for being a WST listener. Head on over to their website, click on request an estimate in the top right corner, and put in the promo code WST for a special discount on moving services and moving supplies, and let them know when you're moving, where you got to go, and what needs to come with you. And the friendly staff at Rolly's will turn it around quickly, get you a great quote, and get you locked in to make that next move for you and your family in 2025. Moving this year, get the white glove treatment from Rolly's. Find out more, request an estimate today over at Rolly's.com. A nice break in the weather today. It's actually gorgeous outside. It was brutal the last few days, and bad news, we're going to get right back to it, which means this is your chance to make sure that you're not on the side of the road calling one of your buddies for a boost or CAA. Make sure that you're ready for what's to come in the next few months in the teeth of Winnipeg winter, and that would be going down to Manitoba Battery, making sure your battery is great. You can get free testing at either Logan Avenue or Dovercourt Drive, and if you need a new battery for your car or your truck, shop local, get the best prices in town, and heck, the best service as well. Manitoba Battery will deliver your batteries to you for free anywhere inside the perimeter with any purchase over $60. It's just that easy. So give them a call or shop online today at manitobabattery.com, and don't get left out in the cold. And hey, our friends at F Apparel are also ready for the new year. If it's new year, new you, new wardrobe, and you need to step up your menswear game, head on down to F Apparel. Custom suits beginning at $400, along with chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and the biggest and best selection of menswear accessories in the city as well. Of course, fellas, if you're getting married this summer, I know they're already working on big wedding plans, and heck, they've got a great deal for a discount for the wedding party when you and the fellas get your suits for the big day. Get on that as well. Pop by and see them, 190 Smith Street downtown. You can also find more information or book a fitting online at their website at EPHapparel.com.
There's Huss. I don't know, maybe we'll hear from him in some recorded video in a pool. Shout out to Huss, who did send us the WST parlay recorded from a rooftop pool in Costa Rica, and the parlay hits. So we did get a couple messages from people who tailed. I mean, he's recording the video in a pool. I had to jump on it as well. Shout out to J-Bone with the super chat. He says, going to Boston tomorrow for my first Jets game with the Jet emoji. Awesome to hear. And the Jets are on this road trip. Montreal yesterday, Boston tomorrow, Washington on Saturday. Here's head coach Scott Arniel talking about starting the road trip with a win.
You know, obviously you're coming out east where you don't really see these teams too often, and you know, to be able to start it this way, the first 10 minutes not so much, but to get the win is huge. You know, we got to go into another tough building in Boston, and we're going to see Washington at the end of it. So all real tough teams, and you know, and we knew Montreal was playing well, and we just had to make sure that we got to Jet hockey sooner than later. We finally did, and I like the way we kind of started to really dominate that second period.
Like the way that they dominated the second period, head coach Scott Arniel, and that is 4 wins in a row for the Winnipeg Jets, going back to, Colorado, Utah, Calgary, and now Montreal. Here's Mark Scheifele on what's been the key to this stretch here.
We've just played simple. You know, we haven't tried to overcomplicate the game. You know, we get pucks deep. We're a tough team when we play in the ozone. We hold on to pucks. You know, we make the other team defend, and tonight was a prime example of that. We got pucks in. When a team has to play in their D zone for a while, it's we're a tough team to play against, and like that second period, we did a lot of it, and we're gonna have to do that more against Boston.
There's Mark Scheifele. Pucks in deep, keep it simple. I mean, they're hockey cliches because they're cliches. Looking around the NHL, 1 o'clock when the show starts, it is waiver wire. Yesterday it was Brandon Saad, a bit of a surprise, veteran players. Played with Columbus, Chicago. The Blues put him on waivers, making $4.5 million salary cap hit. Well, he cleared. There was some speculation maybe someone would pick him up. Maybe a bad team that needed a veteran player, and you could flip him for retained salary at the deadline. He's down in the AHL. But how about this name? Certainly surprise here. Philip Grubauer, goaltender for Seattle. He's on waivers. I remember when Seattle came back, he signed a big free agent contract with them. Has not lived up to it. He's got 383 goals against, 866 save percentage in 21 games this year. That is not going to get it done, and he's on the waiver wire. Some surprising names here, Connor, hitting the list over the last couple of days.
Yeah, I said yesterday that I thought Brandon Saad was going to get claimed, and he was not, obviously. So that was kind of a swing and a miss there. I thought one of the bad teams might eat that contract to have a veteran player play with some of their high-end skilled players like a San Jose or Chicago. But yeah, really interesting. I mean, Philip Grubauer, not the most surprising name on waivers. We saw Jack Campbell, another failed goaltender, big contract, end up in the AHL or on waivers. That was 2 seasons ago now, I think. So not all that surprising to see Philip Grubauer on waivers, and we don't need to get into a discussion about whether or not someone will claim him, because I think that that's a resounding no from all 31 other NHL GMs.
Crazy. $5.9 million AAV for the rest of the season, next season, and the year after. Signing goalies to long-term contracts, you never know how it's going to go, and I think if you're a fan of the Winnipeg Jets, it's kind of the part of the lineup that you just set it and forget it. Haven't really had to worry about it. We're talking about contracts, talking with Dylan Sandberg. You mentioned an RFA after the season. Jacob saying, Stoller at Sportsnet saying, sign him up long-term. I know I put out a video a couple years before he signed this current deal with Brandon and Hustler saying, just give him a long-term deal, at that point. They opted for a shorter term, and he's an RFA this year. Now, I go by this website, AFP Analytics. They put out contract projections. Daily Faceoff uses them. All right, I'll give you a sign it or skip it, Connor. Dylan Samberg, this was their projection. 2 years, 3.86 AAV.
Interesting, because he is 26 years old. So, and he's an RFA now, but wouldn't that drive him to UFA or unrestricted free agency?
I didn't think the number of years made sense at all. You're going to want to give him 5, 6, 7 years, but he's just signed a 2-year deal at 1.4 million AAV. I'm curious, what do you think his cap hit will be, and how long should the Jets go with this guy? 26 years old. I
mean, if they wanted to go all 8 years, they could, right? I mean, at 26 years old, you'd be paying him till he's 34. You're not really paying for the back nine of a player's career at that point. Like 33, 34 is typically when players start to decline, but they're not a shell of their former selves in a way. And they're not the 38-year-old versions of themselves where you see these buyouts and cap dumps and things like that. So yeah, why not go 8 years and maybe even lower the AAV if Dylan Samberg was willing to do that, right? Typically, though, defensive defensemen that don't put up a lot of points don't get paid as much as offensive defensemen that put up a lot of points. So if you went 8 years with Dylan Samberg, maybe it would be like 5 million, 5.5 million, 4.5 million, somewhere in that range, right? Which I think the Jets should do immediately. The Athletics market value for Dylan Samberg, I think this season is 5.8 million. So if you sign him for the next 8 years at 5 million, I'd say sign me up for that. And 2 years, 3.8. I don't know. The UFA thing is interesting, but I do think Dylan Samberg loves it here, and he'd be willing to go long term. So the Jets should be looking to do that because he's in the prime of his career, and he can be a top 4 fixture here for a long time.
Yeah, certainly become a fan favorite. We did show the TikTok that him and his wife did, gaining a lot of recognition. So right. I'm curious to see. That's just one of many contracts this offseason. How about his partner, Neil Pionk, Connor? I mean, Pionk having an incredible, offensive season. He's got 32 points in 52 games. His career high was his first season with the Winnipeg Jets, where he had 45 in 71. You think if he plays all 82, he should be able to pass that. This AFP Analytics has Pionk's next deal, 6 years, 6.7 million AAV. Are you going to sign it or skip it on Neil Pionk?
Oh, boy, that's a tough one. I lean towards skip it. Honestly, I don't know if you agree with me, Remo, but 6.7. I mean, Neil Pionk right now is on 5.85, his current contract. That was a 4-year deal when he signed it. And until this year, and I mean, he's having a great year this year. Like I said, Dylan Samberg has stabilized that pairing. They're posting great results. Neil Pionk putting up a lot of points. But until this year, the Jets weren't getting positive value on that contract of 5.85. So to give him a 1 million raise for the next 6 years after this one, and Neil Pionk is older than Dylan Samberg as well. I believe Neil Pionk is 29. So that would be that would go deeper into his career, or maybe the late 30s, where you don't want to be paying a premium for a top 4 defenseman. And then you also have to bake in what do the Jets have as a replacement, right? Is Elias Salamonson a guy that's going to come up and play NHL minutes next year? Because if the Jets do believe that, and I know Salamonson hasn't played in a while for the Moose, he's been injured, but if the Jets believe Salamonson can come in and play a second pairing role next year, or a third pairing role, even a sheltered role, then yeah, I think you could skip that contract. But that's tough. What do you think, Remo? 6 by 6.7.
I think it's easy to say, hey, that's a lot of money. He is 29, and you don't want to pay too much. But who are they going to put in? You do have concerns about his play away from Dylan Samberg, and also those guys are both from Hermantown. You can't break these guys up. Right. Come on, it's part of the Jets Minnesota connection here. So I think it is a little high, and we saw him have a big year in his previous contract year, and the years in between haven't been the best. I admit he has battled injuries and battled some, personal stuff going away from the ice, which has been well documented. He seems to be healthy, seems to be right. It is in a contract year. Seems the AAV seems high, but the cap's going up. He's been a big part of this team. I'm really curious how this one shakes out. And I said this when Mark Scheifele was a free agent. Like, if they didn't sign Mark Scheifele, who are they getting at second line, at top center? No one. They didn't have a direct replacement. Connor Hrabchak, you can find cheap goalies. They seem to have been able to do that, at least at the backup position. But this is a number, your second pair right shot defenseman. Like, who are they going to get? I don't know who they have in line, and would you be able to convince a free agent? We'll have to see, what they do at the deadline. Their name has been linked to a number of defensemen. Do they trade for someone with term, for like a Bowen Byram or Owen Power out of Buffalo, just using a name that's on the trade bait board as a person with term as an example. But I'm curious what they would do to replace that. Their defense has been very the best in the league, the last year and a half here.
Another part of this is I'm not sure what the exact number is on how much cap space the Jets do have next year. But if we're playing this sign it, skip it game, and you get into Sandberg 5x8, and you get into Ehlers 8.5x8, or whatever, you get Velarde at whatever number that it like. How much cap space do the Jets really have here, right, to allocate all this money? And I know we can get into the other contracts if you'd like with Ehlers and Velarde and what their projections are. But I think the money would be better suited going to the younger players in Velarde and Sandberg and signing those guys long-term rather than the UFAs who are a little bit older.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. I mean, we can talk about Gabe Velarde. I mentioned his numbers since December 4th. He's mad that he's snubbed from the Team Canada snubs list.
Exactly.
Gabriel, no one mentioned him at all. But could you imagine if him and Mark Scheifele were on Team Canada? I mean, he can be that big body to go in front of the net. Again, I mentioned since December 4 when they named the team. Gabriel Velarde, 32 points. Sam Bennett, 6. Anthony Cirelli, 6. So I don't know. I feel like Velarde, again, he's snubbed from the snub team. No one mentioned him as a snub. I'm here doing it now. And I'm looking at this AFP analytics, their feature in Daily Faceoff. They have him 4 years, 6.3 million AAV.
Sign it. Don't think twice. All day.
You think that could go up if his numbers keep going up?
I think so. Like, it all depends, right? Because I believe Gabe Velarde has 2 more years under team control. So the Jets might want to bridge again. I know this is Gabe Velarde's first fully healthy season, at least so far in his career, really. So I don't know if you want to go 8 years with a guy like that, like you would Dylan Sandberg. But I mean, Gabe Velarde is not a $6.5 million player. Like, he's playing way better than that. What he brings to this power play, what he brings to the top line. Yeah, you sign that, and I don't think you think twice. And if he wants to go longer term, I think you take that all day because, 6.3 for the next 4 years, I think would be a bargain. As we sit here today in late January, obviously a lot can change. And even, if Gabe Velarde has a healthy and successful playoff run with this Jets team and they win 2 rounds and he's one of their leading scorers, like, that price is going to go way up. So as we sit here right now, if Gabe Velarde came to me with that contract offer and I was the Jets GM, I would sign that. I don't know about you.
He seems to fit in really well with that top line. Kyle Connor, he's got 1 more year under contract. We know Mark Scheifele is here long-term. Just imagine locking that lineup for the foreseeable future. But you mentioned, is there going to be an odd man out? Nikolai Ehlers, he's in the final year of his contract, career year, finally getting that power play one time that you've been wanting for so long. Okay, I think it's going to be tough to keep all of these guys, but they have Ehlers down for a 6-year contract, 7.2. And that's when you say, well, if Ehlers walks, who are you replacing him with? I think it's, this guy's been a Jet, drafted by the Jets, just had his 500th point. It'd be tough to see this guy go, but I think if you're him, maybe you look elsewhere if someone's going to give you more ice time, but he's got to be happy with his role this season. And I'm really curious how this one plays out. And, there seems like they're going to go, the end of the season, and unless they sign a mid-season deal, but we'll see how this plays out with Nikolai Ehlers.
Yeah, 7.2 for 6 years. I think if we're playing this sign it skip it game, I'd sign that. I think Nikolai Ehlers is better than that, and he's a part of the best power play in the NHL. You've seen it with the Rangers the past couple of years, who have now fallen off a cliff a little bit, and the Avalanche, who just traded away Mikko Rantanen. Like, these elite power plays across the league that have stayed together for so long are slowly getting broken up. But if the Jets can hold on to Davis Payne and hold on to Nick Ehlers and all the players on that top unit for a long time and always have like a perennial top 5 power play in the league, I think you sign up for that, because this power play has been such a weapon this season. And even on a night like last night where they went 0 for 3 and the 5-on-5 carried and the top line played great, you know that there will be nights going forward where the Jets aren't playing their best at 5-on-5 and they don't have that juice, but the power play bails them out. The power play goes 2 for 3 and suddenly it's a game, or they scrape away a point, or whatever the case may be. So, Nick Ehlers has been great for the Jets this year, and that power play, of course.
Yeah, power play, very elite. And you wonder, is the strategy sign these guys and maybe go cheaper on depth? The depth UFAs. I mean, Alex Iafallo, Appleton, Nemestikov. I think it's going to be tough to keep all of these guys, right? Maybe you have someone on, a lower contract to fill in. And are you signing any of these? Iafallo, what they have, 3 years, $3.58 million AAV. Appleton, 3 years, $3.5 million AAV. 2 years, $2.3 million AAV for Nemestikov. Which one? I don't know. Sign, trade, release. Which one are you going to do here?
I would sign. Yeah, well, okay, I'd sign Nemestikov in that one. I think that would be number one. If you can get him under $2.5 million, I mean, even he's a quality fourth liner at worst, right? But you want to sign your top of the lineup players and pay those guys, because the depth players are the ones that are easier to replace with younger players, with draft picks coming up, with an Elias Salamonson on your third pair, with a Nikita Chibrikov in your bottom 6, right? Like, those players you don't want to be spending too much on, because you can replace those guys with players in the AHL that are on the up and coming, right? So I think Nemestikov at 2.25 or whatever you mentioned there would be good value. The other two, I know Mason Appleton and Adam Lowry have played here together for a long time, and the Jets really like that duo, so I think they'd keep it. I'd like to see maybe a Nikita Chibrikov there alongside Lowry and Niederreiter, or whatever the case might be in the Jets' future. But yeah, usually typically bottom of the lineup players are easier to replace than a Gabe Vilardi or Nick Ehlers. So you want to prioritize those guys at the top of the lineup and then fill your depth out elsewhere.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a luxury to have Alex Iafallo, who's played, line bingo every line.
Right.
He's played a power play too. But he's a UFA after the season. He's making $4 million this year. Curious what happens. With him. Connor, I mean, it's been great chatting with you. Winnipeg Jets, sign it or skip it here today as we go through the projections put forward. It is going to be an interesting offseason, an interesting trade deadline. It's fun to, look at the standings and admire, first place. But I think that's why it's so important here. You can't keep these guys forever, to try to make a deep playoff run and take advantage of this opportunity where you're first in the Central Division. You can get home ice advantage with 30. You're in a really good spot here with 30 games to go, and try to advance a couple rounds. Nice to see them. We're still reminiscing on 2018. That was so great. But hey, that was that was 7 years ago now. What's going on here?
Exactly. Yeah. And you mentioned the deadline cap space there. I did some research earlier on this because I was curious on what the other teams are, looking at in terms of the Western Conference. The Jets, that we've documented many times, Murat Atesh from The Athletic brought it up, are going to have roughly $11 million in deadline cap space to add at the deadline, right? 11.2 million is the current Puckpedia projection. If we roll down the list here at every team that's currently in a playoff spot in the Western Conference, bear with me here, but Edmonton's at 5 million, Vegas 3.6, Dallas 3.6, Minnesota 200,000, Colorado 4 million, LA is also at 11 million, right around where the Jets are at. And then Calgary, it's hilarious. They've been like barely above the cap floor all year. So they can actually add 81 million, or at least that's the projection, which is just like they've accrued so much cap because they've been at the floor all season long. But anyways, the rest of the Western Conference, the Jets have the advantage in terms of what they can add at the deadline. And they're the number one team, and they have the best goalie, and they have the best power play. And you run down the list of all these things, and you start to get excited because post March 7, this Jets team might look a lot different. They have the room, they have the assets to add some of these high-end talent players on the trade boards and not have to retain money. They can just add them, whether it's a rental, whether it's a player with term. I know Jets fans would rather see players with term to kind of fit this window with Hellebuck and Scheifele on these contracts right now. But they do have the advantage over almost every single team in the West when it comes to how much money they can add at the deadline.
Yeah, we'll be counting down here. March 7. It's a Friday. Going to be one of the biggest shows of the year. So, hey, if you're watching us now, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. So you're here every day at 1 as we're talking about, I don't know, whatever rumor is coming out or a trade to announce. The Monahan trade breaking in February last year, one of the top shows of 2024. We're going to bring in Ken Wiebe in a second here. I believe he's in Montreal, but first, here is Hustler. Let me get, I can't find the button for it. Oh, there it is. Here's Hustler.
Do want to thank our friends at Princess Auto for their great support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. Of course, Princess Auto, founded in Winnipeg, headquartered in Winnipeg, now coast to coast, but with 3 Winnipeg locations to serve you. Princess Auto is where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete those projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. Pop down to the location on Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, or for the folks in Westmount in Brandon, and check it all out for you. And, of course, you can get working 24/7, 365 on those ideas by checking out the Princess Auto website and shopping online as well. Be a minute before we're at Princess Auto Stadium, but we've got that Bomber schedule, so we'll count down to the days. And in the meantime, pop by your local Princess Auto today. Got to give a big cheers to our friends at Canadian Club, Canada's favorite Canadian whiskey. Speaking of Princess Auto Stadium, Canadian Club, of course, is the official spirit of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Looking forward to seeing and cheersing many of you in the north end of the stadium at some point next year. But in the meantime, 12 months a year, Canadian Club is Canada's favorite original Canadian whiskey since 1848. Pop by your local Manitoba liquor marts and look for the Canadian Club display featuring Canadian Club Classic, Canadian Club 100% Rye, and more. And when you're popping by your local beer store, keep your eyes out for Canadian Club and Ginger Ale, pre-mixed cocktails in cans available at vendors throughout the city. Also want to thank our friends at Wallace & Wallace for their great support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. Of course, Wallace & Wallace has been the fencing and overhead door specialists and leaders since 1946, serving both commercial and residential customers. If your property needs the security and protection of a new fence, Wallace & Wallace has every kind you could possibly need. Vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, or wood fences. And if in 2025 you might be thinking of a new overhead garage door for your home, talk to the gang at Wallace & Wallace. They have Winnipeg's largest selection of overhead garage doors, which means they'll have one to perfectly match your home and look great and add value to your home as well. Give Wallace & Wallace a call, 452-2700. The Wallace & Wallace team will be happy to pop down and arrange a time to come out and see you and give you a free estimate. You can also check them out online at wallacefences.com, wallacedoors.com, or pop down and see them at their showroom on Lowson Crescent, just off of Kenaston.
There's us. He's in Costa Rica, enjoying the sun, enjoying the pool. One guy not currently enjoying the sun or the pool. He's coming to me from Boston. Ken Wiebe for the Winnipeg Free Press was in Montreal last night for the Jets game. And Ken, Are you
Remo,
growing
hello.
a mustache there?
Yes, it's a very lightly formulated mustache. The result of 3 stitches after a puck to the face Sunday hockey. But fortunate to have her stitched up. But yes, Eric Comrie got me pretty good there, Remo. There's no doubt about it. I was not expecting that response. Full with the rock eyebrow raise there too, right? So. I applaud Eric Comrie. He's very plugged in on what's happening around the league, as you know. But he's trying to have a big moment. First win since November 1st, but he's a very very plugged, dialed in guy. He wanted to know what was up, and I was happy to tell him. So, and in classic Eric Comrie fashion, and when I mentioned it was from a puck to the face, he's like, "Oh, sorry." Oh man! But then he did afterwards when the scrum was over. Remo, he sort of gave me the gears for not having a full cage, which I know you and I talked about that last week already. The full cage will be coming. Will be coming the next time. The next time Ken Wiebe is on the ice, it will be with a full cage on.
Yeah, I'll say, on my team, there have been a number of incidents where guys have taken pucks or sticks to the face and had facial injuries. So, my team, 10 years ago may have had a number of guys with visors on, but every time someone sees someone take a puck or stick to the face on your team or the other team, just another guy puts on the full cage. Is like, you know what? I don't need to deal with this. And I'll give credit to you for gutting through
safety
Kenny,
first, Remo.
Yeah, Kenny and Rennie. And how about your partner, Rennie? I got to text him. Gutting it out this week. So wishing him all the best. Did not sound great earlier, but he's at 75% yesterday.
Yes, he was full Undertaker mode on. You came up from looked like the WrestleMania streak was in jeopardy. Sean has done every show this year.
Crazy.
Remo, he wanted to keep the Iron Man streak alive. I was quite doubtful that he would be joining me on Tuesday. I got a text from Laura, his wife, saying that he had been in bed all day and that she wasn't even sure if he was going to be watching the game. And I'm like, I text him to say, hey, I've got Mike on call here. Hope you're feeling better. And he's like, no, I feel great. And I'm like, how? I don't know how you feel great, but he managed. And impressive job of powering through. I certainly give him a lot of props for that, for sure.
Yeah, speaking of powering through, the Jets powered through that slow start yesterday. I thought we were going to be in for another, Utah-like game with Scott O'Neill calling out the team's play. Outshot early, but were able to overcome it, and a really impressive win there in Montreal last night.
Yeah, I mean, definitely impressive second period. That was domination station. Remo 13-3 shots on net, and Connor Hrabchak was just sensational. Another one of these classic, posters for the case for Hart Trophy for Connor Hrabchak, and again. He's just stabilized things when the Jets had trouble to get their legs for the first 10 or 12 minutes or so, but when the Jets started taking control of the puck, and when they forced the Canadiens to play defense, we found out it is still very much a work in progress for that team, who again, they deserve full marks for their ability to stay in this playoff hunt here, Remo, but they're a much better team in the offensive zone than they are in the defensive zone, as it turns out here. And there were a couple just kind of back-breaking plays in that game, including the obviously the Gus Bus forecheck turnover, which led to the second Kyle Connor goal, and that was really a big dagger there with 1.5 seconds to go in the second period. And that was kind of emblematic of sort of the stark contrast. And we always talk about how thin the margins are. If that game goes to be 2-1 at the intermission, who knows how it goes, right? Instead, the Jets score late, and although the Canadiens still had some chances in the third, because they have the 2-goal cushion, now it's not a big deal that Josh Anderson gets a breakaway. And yes, Jets are fortunate that the backhand was wide, but they had that 2-goal cushion, and again, Connor Hrabchak kind of just steered the ship home after that.
Solid. As always, I know you've been a big, proponent of the Gus Bus for years, but with season high minutes last night, 13-17, a 4-game point streak, the big forecheck. Has the Gus Bus finally arrived? Does he have a permanent parking spot in the garage now?
Well, he's certainly not in the situation where, Remo, you get these road road rooms that don't have, they're a little bit cramped, and maybe some guy, usually a younger player, is stuck dressing in a chair instead of a locker. He's certainly advanced past that. I don't know that he's got the full doctor parking, assigned parking seat there, but I mean, he definitely has earned himself a spot on the club. But I mean, we were debating this on the show last night. I mean, if the Jets are going to go out and get a forward now, if they're healthy, we've been talking maybe one of Gustafsson or Rasmus Kupari are in. Well, I mean, who knows? There could be a scenario where the Jets have both of them on the sidelines, but there's also a scenario now where both of them could be in the lineup and playing contributing roles right now. So, and again, too, Remo, I mean, that fourth line has been really excellent. I know that was a blended shift goal where Gustafsson set up Kyle Connor at the end of a longer shift, but I love the way that Morgan Barron is playing, and I mean, we've been giving plenty of praise to Alex Iafallo for his ability to move up and down the lineup, but I'm just seeing a confidence with David Gustafsson, and he spoke about it on Sunday when I was asking him about it. He just, he's always been a guy who's been super conscientious defensively, very smart, always leaves his line mates in a better position, but now he's starting to make some plays with the puck that remind you of the player we saw playing for Sweden at the World Juniors, and a guy that really did a nice job with the Moose, not just defensively, but in putting in some complimentary numbers. So it's been a wild season for Gustafsson. I mean, he won't need a friendly reminder of what happened the last time he played the Bruins. But it'll be it's interesting timing that David's playing his best hockey leading back up to the game against the Bruins. And no, I am not suggesting that he go down and chase down Trent Frederick to say thank you by any stretch, nor do I think he should offer for a rematch. But I do think that, David has had an incredible reset after suffering the concussion. He's come back and played a really important role for the Jets. And since Adam Lowry left the lineup, Remo, I mean, he's doing an exceptional job in what he's being asked to do. And he's being asked to do more because he's shown an ability to deliver, right? I mean, his faceoffs have been great also. And again, Rasmus Kupari breaks the 12-game drought without a goal. But, I think you could make the case that, Scott O'Neill might consider giving Gustafsson a little bit more, and maybe you might see those guys flip-flop between the third and fourth lines, depending on matchup scenarios and things of that nature. But I love the way Gustafsson has been playing, and I mean, he's just really the picture of perseverance given what he's gone through. And what did he played 3 of the first 35 or 37 games, and now to have a 4-game point streak, like, it seems almost impossible, but it's a reminder of, just how skilled every player that makes the NHL actually is. And, he's taking full advantage of the responsibility and doing a really good job. And, again, this is a guy who works incredibly hard and now is seeing some rewards.
And he's 3 points away from a career high that he had last year in 39 games. He's on game 20 this year. We'll get to the Boston game shortly, sure. But, when Adam Lowry was injured, I think there was some certainly concern. How are they going to replace this guy? He's, the defensive third-line center, huge captain, leader, huge part of the team. But it seems like Rasmus Kupari as well has stepped up his game. And you look at the ice time distribution last night, I've never seen it so even among the forwards. I know Kupari missed the open net early, but was rewarded at the end with an empty net goal. I think he's filled in, or you have to be impressed with his play the last couple of games here, filling in on that third line for Adam Lowry.
For sure, he's using his speed effectively, right? It's allowing his line mates to create some opportunities. And yeah, I mean, in that situation, Nikolai Ehlers did all the hard work, but Rasmus still was able to explode down the right side. And once Ehlers pushed back the defenseman, that left a wide open lane for him, right? So, but overall, Kupari, I've liked his game also. Similar to Gustafsson, they knew that with Lowry being out, there would be more, put on their plate, and they've handled that additional, responsibility very well. Again, different players, but David is very, very smart. He uses what he has for his skating. He's improved his skating effectively, but Kupari is the kind of guy that can just create chaos, like for the opponent because of how fast he is, right? He also creates some chaos for his own line mates at times, but I've liked how he settled in with, Niederreiter and Mason Appleton. That line had some very nice sustained zone time shifts. They're able to attack their opponent, and they're able to check against the opposition's scoring lines as well. So, yeah, I mean, props to Kapari. He's gone, stretches of time without getting many points, but he still creates chances. And as long as he can take care, of his responsibilities in the D zone, he can be an effective player. There's no doubt about that. Both of those guys are taking more draws, especially with Lowry being out. And I mean, to your original point, I mean, when's the last time we saw Mark Scheifele with 1839 in a game that he wasn't hurt in? I mean, that was, certainly an interesting development there. But yeah, I mean, that line certainly didn't need a whole lot of time to do a lot of damage in a game like that either.
Yeah, Mark Scheifele, you have to be impressed with his performance, his poise with the puck. Him and Kyle Connor were tied for second in the league in goals. But were you surprised that there were some boos for Mark Scheifele? That was a while ago now, and I was impressed with the way that he handled it in the postgame. Certainly showed some maturity there.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, again, it's not a surprise that Habs fans have a long memory, Remo, but I mean, I was at the game last year, and I don't know, maybe it's just me. I mean, do you remember a lot of booing? I mean, he certainly wasn't booed every time he touched the puck last year, from what I remember. I mean, that's the last time the Jets have actually been involved in a shootout, Remo, which is another one of those wild stats. But, I know there's been a lot of, there's a lot of disdain might be too hard a word, but, there's a lot of unhappiness that's being shown for sure towards Mark Scheifele for that hit on Jake Evans. So, we'll see what that means moving forward. But in terms of the maturity, I mean, you're bang on. I mean, he definitely showed great maturity, praised the fan base, and said he loved playing in the arena. So, again, I thought he handled that very well. We know at the time, Mark, thought it was a clean hit on Jake Evans, but a lot of Habs fans don't agree. And over the course of time, I think best thing that Mark Scheifele can do is be a very good player, and that's exactly what he was in that game itself. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see what it means moving forward. But I mean, these teams won't play again until next season, so I'll definitely be curious if they're going to keep that hostility towards him flowing next year. I mean, it didn't knock him down. Oh, good. Remo, you're still there. Good news.
I'm still here. Yeah, you thought I left?
Okay, my picture is showing as black in the middle screen, so I know that
that's Connor, I think.
You've been dumping out during the week from what I've been listening, right? Your hustles have been vanishing or that was last week where you had the phantom.
Oh no!
The phantom internet provider.
Yeah,
you fixed that.
We fixed the internet issue. So I called them.
Okay,
and
good
I
news.
said, hey, what's going on here? I need the internet. And they said, we're going to just do some stuff and make it work. And I haven't had any dropouts. Hustler upgraded
that's
his
good
connection.
News because I thought I had to pull a David Gustafson 18-minute special here based on the screen that I was looking at. No, so glad to see that you're still here. So I won't ramble on. But yeah, I mean, I thought Mark handled it very well. And again, anytime you get the GWG in a game where you're being booed kind of lustily, I'm sure it feels pretty good, even though he didn't really want to let on in the interview that was the case. But as we know, Remo, you don't boo nobodies. Usually you're booing guys that are effective players. And, again, Mark handled it the best way that he could. He made it count. His goal was the game winner. And, in a lot of ways, you quiet the opposition crowd when you deliver a goal of that magnitude. And again, another just absolutely brilliant pass by Gabe Vilardi, and a nice job by Scheifele to kind of find that soft spot in front of the net to bury that shot. And again, the other part too, everyone's trying to praise him for being a good goal scorer. And Mark's like, hey man, I wish I had more assists. kind of a classic moment. Like he's on pace to, break the 42. Yet it seems like he's only interested in, in enhancing Kyle Connor's goal totals for the chase for 50 here. So again, that's also a sign of maturity for a player who's been around for a long time.
Aren't you like Mark? You've got a really good shot too. You can use that once in a while as well. It's like a dual threat. So it seems to work. I know pregame you had a chat with Josh Morrissey. He's got to be fired up for the Four Nations. How do you think it's going to play out for him with this Pietrangelo dropping? Weren't they going to be partners?
I certainly thought that they were lining up well. I mean, some people thought maybe Theodore and Pietrangelo would be partners, but for me, I thought it was a perfect shutdown pairing. Speaking of dual threats, I mean, the guy who can play such a physical, robust game, but also has the ability to run the power play also. I thought they'd be perfect together, quite frankly. I mean, you know how I feel about Colton Parayko's game, Remo. I would say that there's a good chance those two will be paired together as this event gets going, but no shortage of options here. And hey, Cale Makar told me a couple weeks ago he hopes that he gets some shifts with Josh Morrissey. He probably isn't going to be his regular partner. That'll be Devon Taves. But I mean, if the Jets if Team Canada is down a goal, I could easily see John Cooper tossing those guys over the boards and saying, have at it. So, yeah, I mean, I'm also very curious to see who the replacement is. I mean, it could be former Manitoba Moose D-man Chris Tanev. I mean, it could be Mackenzie Weegar. Drew Doughty's going to be getting back in the lineup here. Does he have enough runway to get himself up to speed to play in a best on best? I'm not sure. We know he wants to based on his commentary. We know he's been a guy who played for Canada before, so it makes some sense. But, man, you're certainly asking a lot of a player who, is hopping into game, 50, whatever it is for LA. I don't have the standings in front of me here in terms of games played. And then saying, oh, by the way, we'd like you to be ramped up to 120% because the pace is going to be at an exceptional level when you're going into the Four Nations face-off. But, yeah, I mean, there's some big choices ahead for, I think Brandon Montour is a guy who's under consideration for sure also. And, again, the folks in Edmonton would love to see Evan Bouchard in a Team Canada jersey as well. I just don't think that Bouchard's defensive game is at a strong enough level to be playing on Team Canada, where that Makar is handling the majority of the power play minutes. But yeah, I mean, Josh is fired up for the event. He spoke openly about how much he loves playing at the Bell Center. It's something we've talked about in the past, and I mean, to have the opportunity to have that as your home rink for part of that event until the playoffs move to here in Boston, I think that'll be a lot of fun for him. And I'm quite confident in saying, Remo, that Josh Morrissey will not be booed by the friendly fans in Montreal the way that his pal Mark Scheifele was on Tuesday night.
Certainly, and looking forward to Thursday. You are in Boston. We remember the last meeting between these two teams. The Jets, putting up the 8th spot, had a couple fights. Adam Lowry, who dropped the gloves with Zadorov in that game, he's out. He's not going to be playing. Is there going to be any carryover tomorrow? I know the Jets are off today, so you haven't talked to them, and I don't know if the Bruins have spoke about it. But look, we're talking here today, the day before. Should we expect any fireworks or anything tomorrow night?
Yeah, Remo, we know the Jets weren't really thrilled with Trent Frederick's choice of dance partner. And, Logan Stanley went so far as to say, hey, man, if you wanted to go, I was on the ice. So we know the secondary fight with Mark Kastelik and Logan Stanley broke out there, and both players were ejected. My understanding is Kastelik is not available, so he will not be a possible dance partner. But yeah, I mean, although Trent Frederick did go after someone who had 0 career fights going into that situation, and Trent is a tough customer, and he's usually a pretty willing combatant. So I would be shocked if he didn't notice Logan Stanley's invitation, Remo. So, I applaud Logan Stanley for standing up for his teammate, and I would expect that at some point those two are going to find each other. I don't think this is going to be staged fight first shift of the game or anything like that. But it wouldn't surprise me if those two did drop the mitts and had something to say about it at some point. But Remo, let's also look at the bigger picture here. If you're the Boston Bruins and you just got smoked by the Buffalo Sabres and you're barely hanging on to a playoff spot, I'm not sure that looking for a fight because you didn't like how somebody called you out is going to be at the top of their priority list either. I mean, this is a team that is reeling a little bit, and they're also under siege. There's tons of teams playing well right now. The Islanders have got a 5-game winning streak going. The Red Wings are still kind of knocking at the door, and even the Canadiens, who announced just half an hour ago, Remo, that Caden Gooley will be out indefinitely. I mean, I'm still trying to figure out how it was a lacerated calf muscle, right, or quad?
Yeah,
Sorry,
that's
quad.
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 Yeah, that's.
Yeah, so I mean, there was no contact with Neil Pionk. I'm not sure if his own skate sliced him. It's tough to say. I mean, we're gonna have to get some more explanation again because it happened after practice. The evaluation. It's tough to really know exactly how that happened because I didn't see his own skate maybe his own skate must have cut him, unless it just there was a laceration otherwise, which it just looked like a scary situation. Sorry to get detoured here, but I mean, all to say that the Canadiens are going to be without one of their best defensemen as they're trying to stay in a playoff race here. Connor wrote about how the Jets have been, so strong since December. I mean, the Canadiens have been exceptional in narrowing the gap and in the playoff chase, and they're going to have to do that with their best shutdown defenseman for an extended period of time. So I mean, that's a big blow for them. But I mean, all to say that the Bruins are finding themselves in a situation, Remo, where they're going to have to decide if they're buying, selling, or standing pat here. Do they believe enough in the group that, if getting 8th place, is that going to be enough organizationally for how they feel about where they're at? And I mean, complicating that also is that in the year that they had the best regular season in history, NHL history, they got bounced by an 8th seed. So does that impact their thinking, saying, hey, look what Florida showed us. If you get in, you can beat the 1 seed. So in that regard, I mean, Boston's been like a perennial playoff team for so long that you don't expect them to be selling, but at the same time, they're sort of in a no man's land area where they're never mind the murky middle. They're not even sure what they're going to have going forward. Brad Marchand is without a contract for next year. Their 2 big free agent signings have not really panned out in Lindholm and Zadorov. I think too, they also have look like they had a little bit of a flu bug going through their own room based on Brandon Carlo and Oliver Wahlstrom being scratched yesterday due to illness. So I do think it'll be a highly intense game. And Remo, look no further than last year. The Jets absolutely drilled the Bruins in the last game before the Christmas break. And when they came back to Boston in January, they found a very motivated team that was wanting to show them that wasn't the way that things were going to go. And, Paul Edmonds and I were talking yesterday at the morning skate. I mean, the Jets don't have a ton of victories in this barn here at TD Garden since they've been back in the league. So it's usually a tough place to play for all teams, and you're going to have a very ornery Bruins club, and you're going to have a Jets team that's feeling good about itself, but it also had an early scare yesterday. So I expect their start to be a lot better also. Connor Hrabchak loves playing in the East where he played in college. So I think that they're going to be sharp and ready for when the puck is dropped, shortly after 6 p.m. Central Time.
Yeah, the Bruins seem to have trouble in the post-Bergeron era. Ken, you mentioned Lindholm not working out, the strong defense and goaltending, which they're known for. Minus 25 goal differential, but they are currently first in the wild card spot, and the Jets have had some, wild games against Boston. I don't know, they're in first place. I don't think they want to. Maybe they do want to get revenge, Ken, but I think they always also want to get out of there healthy, not get involved in any type of BS.
Let's put it that way. Yeah, let's put it that way. I don't see it as a priority for them, but when you call somebody out and they ask you, it's hard to say no, I guess, in that situation. And Remo, I mean, Scott O'Neill has spoken at length about, with Adam Lowry being out, that Logan Stanley is in the lineup for an element of toughness. So, again, I won't be surprised if they go at it tomorrow. But again, I don't know that it's going to be something that you're looking for in terms of setting the tone out of the gate or anything like that. But obviously, Logan had a couple of tough shifts yesterday. Their ice time for the third pairing was down in the 10-minute, just under 11-minute range for both Fleury and Stanley. Didn't play a whole lot in the third period. So, maybe that opens the door for some potential changes. We know that Scott O'Neill has talked about trying to get Ville Heinola and Colin Miller into the lineup. So, I just based on history, I would imagine that Miller is first in, but I don't think that they're going to replace the entire pairing. But I won't be surprised if Colin Miller is in the lineup. But again, for all the folks in the chat room, and we understand, like I said, I just finished saying it was a tougher game for Logan Stanley. I thought Logan played quite well on Sunday against Calgary. Yesterday was not his best effort. So, but at the same time, based on what we were talking about, and Trent Frederick, with what happened with him last time, I have a hard time believing that Logan Stanley won't be in the lineup, at least as a deterrent for what happened the last time to David Gustafsson.
We don't need to get down that rabbit hole that's been beaten to death here.
Indeed.
Looking ahead to the trade deadline, Ken, I'm looking at trade bait boards. I don't see the Jets' first-round pick on any of them. You think Cheveldayoff is looking to move the pick again to upgrade, or well, what could be on the block for them as they look to, improve what defense or, second line center, which we've talked about all year?
Yeah, I mean, I don't envision a scenario where the first round pick is not in play, Remo. I mean, it has to be in play. Every year the Jets have gone for it and addressed some of those positions. The first round pick has been part of the deal. I mean, they recouped that pick in the Kevin Hayes deal when they moved Trouba for Pionk, but again, the Jets don't have a lot of stuff they can trade off the roster, Remo, either. Yeah. So then you have to go to futures, which means the first round pick is definitely going to be in play. I mean, it's a draft and develop organization. So yes, they would love to hold on to it if they could, but I don't think that you can address those two areas without giving a first round pick unless you're going pretty deep into the prospect pool. Or again, I mentioned in our mailbag earlier this weekend on Sunday that, no one has told me this, but outside of Elias Solomonson and maybe Braden Yager, I don't know that there's another untouchable in the prospect pool. I mean, the Jets aren't going to be handing them out like candy at Halloween or anything like that, and they would like to keep as many as possible. But I think they have to be listening on most of those players if they want to have a high-end upgrade. I mean, depending on what level of player they're going to be bringing in here. I mean, Sean and I spoke about Yanni Gourde as a possibility on the Kenny and Rennie show last night also. So I would think that that's the kind of player that would be in play. But again, are you going to move a first-round pick for Yanni Gourde? I'm not certain about that. I mean, they were comfortable doing it with Monahan, but Monahan has a track record of being a little bit of a higher point producer than Gourde, even though Gourde brings so many great qualities, championship pedigree, and really high motor. It would allow the Jets to also consider the whole Lowry with Ehlers, and then Gourde could also play either on the checking line, or you could interchange those two depending on the matchup. So I would think that that's a guy that makes a lot of sense. But again, if we're looking at the history of Kevin Cheveldayoff, now we're all looking at trade boards, but Kevin's usually looking at someone that's flying under the radar and isn't on those trade boards like Paul Stastny. Nobody expected Paul Stastny to be moved at that time. I mean, it was a little bit different last year with Monahan. Most people thought Monahan would be traded, but I mean, if he could do it, Kevin Cheveldayoff often looks for players who are not on those boards or high on those boards. And, it's not always the bigger name player that has the biggest impact come playoff time. So it keeps you guessing a little bit if that makes sense.
Certainly guessing, following all the news up until March 7.
Yeah.
I mean, how does the Four Nations play? Do you think teams are going to start the ball after? The Jets got a couple weeks of, like a week and a bit of games left. Yep. They jumped on it early last year with Monahan. It seems like this Four Nation is getting in the way, although it didn't stop Colorado from making their big deal over the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, we always talk about deadline spur action, but I mean, Remo, the biggest thing with the preemptive strike is that it inhibits your ability to bank a little bit of or accrue a little bit of extra cap space, right? So yes. If you make the move now, you're absorbing a little bit of a higher number, but at the same time, you leave yourself more time to integrate that player like they did with Sean Monahan. So in a perfect world, they would love to do that, but if you do wait a little bit longer, then maybe you have an ability to aim a little bit higher or bring in a guy who's making a little bit more money. So, I mean, that's a balancing act that all GMs are sort of working through at this time of the year. And I mean, the other thing too is that, even if you got a player before the Four Nations, Remo, they're not practicing really for almost that whole 2-week period anyway. So the integration, would you like to get him closer to the end of Four Nations so that he's ready to get to the games right out of the gate, like on the 22nd against St. Louis? Sure. But I'm just not sure how many of those. It's just so complicated because so many teams on both sides, in both the East and the West, believe that they're still in the race. So a lot of those teams that are on the bubble don't want to be making those moves that are sort of waving the white flag because they want to stay in it as long as they can to keep their fan base, engaged in all of those other things. So all to say that nothing would surprise me. I mean, the Jets are certainly looking right now, but at the same time, I don't know that they're in a rush to make something happen. And the earlier you strike, maybe sometimes you have to overpay a little bit also. So I do think it'll be something we'll definitely be digging our teeth into for the next 5 weeks here before the deadline arrives.
Yes, we'll be following everything. I can't wait for that March 7 deadline. Always a big day here. I know a big day on the Kenny and Rennie show. We'll wrap it up here around the NHL. I mean, have to think the Central Division a little bit reeling right now. Kaprizov injured, Colorado just trade away Rantanen. Although I did like the return in Natchez, but I have to think this. They have their eye here on the Central Division banner. Heiskanen injured for Dallas. It seems like the opportunity is right there for the Jets for the taking. Would put them in a really advantageous spot for round one of the playoffs. No
doubt. I mean, yeah, for sure. I mean, if you want to win 4 rounds, you'd like your first round match to be a little bit on the easier side. And again, that's not to say anything would be easy, but look no further than 2018. It's the best evidence that we have, because that's when the Jets won 2 rounds and went to a third and won 9 games, which only left them just past the halfway point of where they needed to go. They had a 5-game series against the Minnesota Wild in the first round. That certainly helped them. But their inability to eliminate the Nashville Predators in 5 games and having to go 7, or maybe even if it had gone 6 games, right? I mean, then that totally changes the complexion of how they're feeling against Vegas. I think they were a little bit more broken down. And again, Vegas had the formula against the Jets anyway, but as it turns out, I mean, you have to make it as easy on yourself as a team as possible if you want to go on an extended run. So, I mean, right now, there's no doubt about it. I mean, would it be more advantageous to play a team like Calgary or Vancouver than it would to play the Dallas Stars or Colorado? Of course it would. But that's not to say that those other teams aren't, willing or, foes that would give the Jets or any other team difficulty. But yeah, I mean, based on what's happening, those are 2 humongous injuries in the division. Colorado, obviously, we saw that they were not thrilled with what happened. I mean, what transpired, they understand it's a business, but Nathan McKinnon looked and sounded pretty hurt. Jared Bednar did not sound like someone who was overly fired up about losing a 100-point player that helped his team raise a banner in 2022. But at the same time, you get over it and you do your job and you see what happens. And, again, this has nothing to do with Natchez, Remo, but I mean, the Avalanche gave up one of, if not the best winger in the NHL. So when you do that, it's generally not a situation that leaves a lot of people happy. But they needed to get deeper, and they're probably going to make one more move also that will make them a little bit deeper also. But they also lost one of their best players, and that's a guy that's going to be incredibly hard to replace. Even though the return is steady, Mikko Rantanens are not very plentiful around the NHL, and the Carolina Hurricanes, good on them to attack the market, because they're a team that has always struggled to score in the playoffs, and that's been what's kind of prevented them from getting over the top. So it'll be interesting to see. Obviously Rantanen's going to fit in incredibly well, and we'll get 2 looks at him, or 2 more looks at him before the season is over, which should be a lot of fun.
Yes, certainly. Well, Ken, I'll let you get back to whatever it is going on in Boston. I'm sure there's some great stuff coming in the Free Press. I loved your stick article.
Oh, thanks,
a big
man.
stick guy, although I'm pretty old now, Ken. I don't know any of the new brands. If you want to ask me about sticks from like 20 years ago, I could tell you every single one.
Love it.
So
I love it.
I love all the work. If there's anything special you got coming up, let the people know where they can find you as we wrap this conversation up.
Yeah, we'll have a fun week. Interesting. Obviously we're going to see Ovechkin, and PLD is a guy who generally still resonates in the market. He's having quite a strong season with the Capitals here, being used in a shutdown role, but he's found his offensive groove a little bit lately as well. So they're on a long road trip, so I'm not sure I'm going to be able to catch up with him on Friday, but certainly we'll plan to talk with him at the arena on Saturday if that's possible here. So yeah, it should be a fun week all around, and we'll continue to crank it out, Mike and I, at the Free Press. So thank you for the opportunity. As always, Remo, have a great rest of the week here, and enjoy the CFL chatter as you wrap up the show.
Yes, thanks so much, Ken. Yep, I'll talk to you later. Thanks again. There's Ken Wiebe in the Winnipeg Free Press. Wiebe's World on X, Blue Sky, and the Kenny and Rennie Show here on YouTube, post-game for the Winnipeg Jets. And yes, P.L. Dubois hitting his last season point total, his 40th point of the season last night in their win over Calgary. He had 40 all of last year in 82 games with the L.A. Kings. We've talked a lot of hockey here, but there is off-season CFL, free agency, less than 2 weeks away. John Hodge, 3 Down Nation, will join me in a second. But first, here's Huss.
A big cheers from our friends at Winnipeg's favorite local brewery, Little Brown Jug.
You train day in and day out, learning new techniques, approaching new concepts, and living out the thrill of achieving your goals. Building a craft beer is no different. While you spend your hours on the ice, we spend ours here, brewing our trademark beer. Again, and again. Here's to pushing the status quo and challenging ourselves to build something memorable. 1919 by Little Brown Jug.
Hey, folks, not only is Boston Pizza your best place in town to gather with your gang for Winnipeg Jets hockey games with pick-a-player contests and chance to win great prizes and swag from Royal Sports, not only is Boston Pizza your number one spot to get together for NFL playoff games and all the big sporting events in the lounge, January is also the month where every single day is Pasta Tuesday at Boston Pizza. Enjoy until the end of the month. Great deals on all your favorite pasta dishes at your local Boston Pizza with Pasta Tuesday promos every single day, 7 days a week at your local Boston Pizza. Pop in today. And of course, if you can't make it or it's a little too cold to get outside, you can always get it hot and fresh to your door. The great taste of Boston Pizza by ordering online at bostonpizza.com. And a huge shout out to our friends at Royal Sports for 40 years plus. Family owned and operated, the number one hockey and sports superstore in town. If you play hockey or have a hockey player in the family, you probably already know that Royal Sports is your one-stop shop for full equipment, goalie gear, sticks, skates, right down to stick tape, pucks, and skate sharpening. But I will remind you, as we look outside and the river trail is absolutely mint right now, many people not necessarily needing an expensive pair of hockey skates, just want to go out and make the most of Winnipeg winter. Royal is the best place in town for some affordable recreational skate options that won't set you back maybe the same amount of that a pair of the blades that the pros use. Get on down there. While you're at it, check out all the best selection of Winnipeg Jets merchandise, Bomber gear, NFL, NHL, you name it, they've got it. Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway. Don't forget to check out all the cool stuff on the King Skate, Snow, and Surf side. And give them a follow on Instagram at Royal Sports Winnipeg for the latest merchandise drops, specials, and sale information. Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway. Great sponsors of Winnipeg Sports Talk.
There's Huss. He's in Costa Rica. We all saw that topless video he posted from the pool yesterday giving out parlays. That's what you want to see from Huss, right? John Hodge from 3 Down Nation. I know you were a big fan of Hustler giving out shirtless bets on social media, right?
Well, I was suggesting off air, maybe we should do some type of GoFundMe just to ensure that Hustler exclusively appears clothed from here moving on forward. Huss and I have the same body type, so I don't feel like I'm body shaming anybody by saying that. But I don't appear topless ever online. And he always seems to, which blows my mind.
Man, it gets so many views, so much reaction, Hustler. And the bet that he gave out won. So I think he got some additional predictive powers from taking his shirt off. But I will say one of the most common comments we got was, Huss, put some sunscreen on. You got to be careful out there with the SPF when it's sunny in Costa Rica.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Reem, but I don't think they've invented an SPF high enough to adequately protect me from the sun. 60, 100, 200, 1,000, bring it on. I am a pasty person. And it's Costa Rica, granted it's January, but still Costa Rica. I know that I'd be looking like a lobster if I was down there with us right now.
Yeah, well, we'll see when he shows up next week. Might have to do some filters on to make him look less red. We'll wait and see. But John, you're a 3-Down Nation. It is the CFL offseason, but really, the news hasn't slowed down, and we found out this week that 2 popular veteran players for the Bombers won't be coming back. Adam Bighill, free agent, won't be offered a contract. The news came out there, reported by Paul Friesen. And then Drew Wolitarsky putting on Instagram video that he was going to be released, and the Bombers posting that on social media after. What do you make of both of those veteran players not coming back for this upcoming season?
I will say I'm surprised a little bit by the Biggie move. And that's not because I thought Biggie was going to come back and be a starter in 2025. But the way the CFL operations cap works is it not only limits the amount of money you can spend on coaching staff members, but it also limits the number of coaches you can have. And a strategy we've seen some teams employ in recent years, whether it's Toronto with a guy like Enoch Mwamba or even Montreal with a guy like David Brown, we've seen teams utilize veteran players who are on long-term injured reserve almost as de facto players. And in fact, in the case of Brown, a guy who suffered, I think it was 4 ACL tears over the course of his collegiate and professional careers, he is now on the coaching staff as a full-time staff member after developing kind of as a pseudo player coach. And I thought that the Bombers might try something similar with Adam Bighill. He did tear his ACL midway through this past season, so there's no guarantee he would have been ready to start the year. So if you sign him to a deal worth close to minimum, which I think at this point of his career, Adam Bighill would have been happy to take, you stick him on 6 games, so his salary is not counting against the cap anyway, at least for the start of the year. And who better, right, to develop some of these young players that the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are going to have on defense, whether it's guys like Michael Ayers who might be stepping into larger roles, or whether it's raw rookies who are going to be coming in 2025. As for Drew Wolitarsky, I was a little bit surprised that people were as concerned about this release as possible. And I want to make it very clear, Drew Wolitarsky is a super smart guy, has always been great with the media. But like Adam Bighill, he did not really play the second half of this past season. He was not really part of the Grey Cup run that this team went on, at least on the field. Off the field, I'm sure he was making contributions. But let's remember, this team was 3-6 at the midway point of this past season. And the guys who helped this team get to the Grey Cup on the field, defensively, it was Tony Jones in the middle of that defense. And in the receiving corps, Kevin Sklarcius, I thought, did everything that Drew Wolitarsky could do and a little bit more. He's got a bit of a bigger frame. He's got more upside. He's got more speed. Wolitarsky, to me at least, has never been a very good fit at that field side wideout spot. I know he played there for 7 years, but he is a guy who, in my opinion, has always belonged in the slot, has kind of needed that waggle to help get open, and the Bombers simply never gave him that role, with it mostly going to Nick Dembski and fellow American players or other American players. So to me, I'm not going to say Drew Wolitarsky's not a loss, but at the end of the day, he wasn't part of the roster that made the playoff push in Winnipeg and further pushed that into the playoffs and had this team very close, competing for a Grey Cup championship right until the early stages of that fourth quarter against the Argonauts in Vancouver. So I think they're both losses, but I don't think these are massive, massive losses for the Blue Bombers.
I would agree. I think they're, they have players ready in place to step in, but I think they're veteran players. Fans, get attached to them, and I think you're sad to see them move on. Would be weird to see them wearing other jerseys, but hey, we saw that with Rasheed Bailey last year as well. So last year, the conversation for free agents, it was Oliveira, Schoen, which one? Who are you going to sign? It seems that we're back at it again with Schoen and Lawler. But hey, they signed Dylan Mitchell. Does that complicate things in terms of bringing back both? Or how do you see that situation play out with the receiving group here?
Well, I think one of the things people have to keep in mind is whatever these guys made last year, right, needs to be taken into account. And what I mean by that is people look at Kenny Lawler and Dalton Schoen and say, well, how could you possibly afford those two? Well, Kenny Lawler made $285,000 last year. Dalton Schoen made $230,000. So even if Kenny Lawler, let's say, comes back on a deal worth $225 and Dalton Schoen signs for $215, the Bombers would actually be saving almost $100,000 in salary on those two. And for that reason, I don't think it's impossible that these two guys both come back. Yes, Brady Oliveira is making a little bit more money than he did last year. Dylan Mitchell, I was led to believe, got in the neighborhood of $140,000 to $150,000, which is not tier one receiver money, but it is a decent amount of money. Nick Dembski should be mentioned, still making above $200,000. So I think it's possible we could see both back, and I think it'll ultimately come down to whether the Bombers want that wideout or whether they want that slot back. Dylan Mitchell, for the record, has always been a wideout type of guy, also brings some return ability, which could help the Blue Bombers as well come 2025. But at the end of the day, for me, the bigger question is what is going to happen with these two starting Canadians, and that is Liam Dobson at left guard and Tyrell Ford at field side cornerback. I don't think that Liam Dobson, I don't want to take anything away from him. He was named All-West Division this past year, but I do think that has, and when you talk to people around the CFL, they will agree that has maybe a little bit to do with most of the great guards in the CFL being in the East Division, not the West Division. But these are two young guys, both of whom are coming to the last year of their rookie deals, and that's very significant because that means they're going to be going from that $80,000 to $85,000 range way up potentially into the stratosphere. I think it's a foregone conclusion that Tyrell Ford is going to become the highest paid defensive back in the CFL, assuming he signs a CFL contract and isn't headed for the NFL. And Liam Dobson, I think when you look at offensive lines around the CFL, there's maybe not a ton of landing spots for him, but guys who are proven starters at guard coming off their rookie deals tend to get second contracts in that 150 to 175 range. Guys like Zach Williams, for instance, with the Calgary Stampeders was like that. Bryce Bell with the Calgary Stampeders was like that. Logan Ferland, right, with the Saskatchewan Roughriders made that type of jump. So I think that when it comes to the receivers, when it comes to the Canadians, I don't think Winnipeg can afford to lose more than two of those four. If I were a betting man, Reem, I would probably put my money on Dalton Schoen being back and Liam Dobson being back and Kenny Lawler and Tyrell Ford playing elsewhere.
Wow. I know Tyrell Ford has, done some workouts with NFL teams, if I remember correctly. See him sticking in the CFL, or what's his future plan look like then if it's not going to be here in Winnipeg?
Well, I think at this point, it's probably less likely he's going to the NFL. That doesn't mean he can't sign. He's free to sign with the NFL whenever, because the way that the CFL's NFL window works is guys who are under contract for 2025 have until free agency gets underway on February 11th to sign. But Tyrell is, of course, a pending free agent. So after that window closes, he is now a free agent and he can sign with anybody. With that being said, however, I do think that we have seen most of the guys who will sign contracts already sign contracts, right? The NFL year, I think, officially turned over on the 6th, and that's when you saw some people signing future reserve deals with NFL teams. With that window being open in the NFL for 3 weeks already, I think the chances of seeing further CFL to NFL signings is going down. If he does stay in the CFL, I don't think it's impossible for the Bombers to retain Tyrell Ford, but let's remember that Evan Holm got a big boost in his pay, essentially going from not league minimum, but close to being right with Dietrich Nichols. I was led to believe in that $130,000 to $140,000 range. And Winnipeg is not a team that has traditionally spent a lot of money in the secondary, particularly at the cornerback spot, right? Let's remember, when this team lost Demerio Houston last year, they didn't panic and go out and sign Jamal Peters or another high-priced corner. They went out and found Terrell Bonds to start for them at boundary cornerback as a rookie. So if you're Winnipeg and you've already got two high-priced halfbacks on the roster, if another team's going to come along and pay over $200,000 for Tyrell Ford, I think you're going to have a really, really tough time matching that, especially because it should be noted, Winnipeg started more than the minimum 7 Canadians all last season. And I don't think they have another Canadian who fits that cornerback spot. So the last thing you want to do is spend $200,000 on a Canadian corner, have him get hurt, and then have to play an American there and change your ratio around. So that is why I'm a little more skeptical that Ford will be back in Bomberland. Do I think it's a foregone conclusion that he's gone? No, but as I've been saying since this past season ended, of all the big name pending free agents, he's the one who I would suspect is least likely to be back in Winnipeg come next year.
All right, we'll mark that one down. If we're putting any, I don't know if Coolbet offers CFL off-season wagering, but there's a hot take from John Hodge. John, one position we've been talking about is backup quarterback ever since the Grey Cup. You know, Collaros injured, didn't really have a suitable replacement like their opponent did in Toronto. Are they going to bring back the same QB room? They got Dolagala and Terry Wilson under contract. I know you just noted at 3 Down Nation that developmental QB Darren Granger retired. Chris Streveler, he's a free agent. What's his future like, and what's the future of the Bombers QB room? As you know, this is the last year of Zach's deal at quarterback.
Yeah, and I mean, Zach is no spring chicken, right? He is now entering his late 30s. I think it's pretty obvious that this team needs to have some type of quarterback in place who can potentially be that all-important heir apparent. A couple years ago, it looked like Drew Brown might be that guy. He's now signed an extension in Ottawa through 2026. So barring some type of blockbuster trade, that will not be an option for Winnipeg in the next couple of years. And that is if of course, Zach Collaros chooses to hang them up after a potential home Grey Cup in 2025. Jake Dolagala, he's got all the tools, 6'7". Those guys don't make it up to the CFL very much. That being said, Saskatchewan, I don't think shed any tears when he left in free agency last year. He goes to BC, starts one game, immediately gets cut. Granted, that was due in part to Nathan Rourke signing with the team following an NFL stint, but Jake Dolagala played very poorly in that lone start. So I think you like that he's got some experience, but I'm skeptical that he's a guy who can start 5-6 games in a row for you and win a bunch of them. I'm also skeptical that he can be the future franchise guy. So whether it's Terry Wilson getting into year 2 and taking a big step forward, whether it is somebody who's currently on Winnipeg's neg list coming into camp, I would assume certainly that they're going to bring more than 3 quarterbacks to training camp. As you mentioned, Darren Granger will not be one of them, choosing to retire at the age of 24. He spent some time on the Blue Bombers practice roster last year. As for Streveler, I mean, he just turned 30. He just welcomed his first child with his partner, as he posted on social media. I talked to him at the end of last year. Let's not forget, he tore his ACL in the Banjo Bowl. He said that he is 100% wanting to play again in 2025. And I believe that Chris Streveler is an exceptional football player. I don't believe, however, that he is an exceptional passer of the football, right? We saw that in the lone game he started this past season, a start that he won, by the way, at home against the Ottawa Red Blacks. But that was a game in which he ran for, I believe it was in the neighborhood of 75 yards. Brady Oliveira went off for, I think it was something like 155. And Streveler did not attempt a ton of passes through the air. I think he finished the game with something like $175 through the air. So I think at this point, when you look at his age, his strengths, his weaknesses, Chris Streveler is not the future franchise quarterback in Winnipeg. That being said, is he worth bringing back? I think the answer could be yes. I mean, he is a tremendous weapon along the ground. I thought that the offense, to an extent, did miss out on that added dimension that Chris Streveler brings as a guy who can beat you with speed, but also beat you with power, right? He is a rare quarterback who can run by you or run through you. I think the question, however, has to be asked, if the future does come, let's say a year from now, 2 years from now, whatever it might be, who will replace Zach Collaros every year? I think that question looms larger, and I'm not convinced that the long-term answer is in-house for the Bombers right now.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, that's an overarching story. As you know, I don't know if this is the last dance for the Bombers, but they are hosting the Grey Cup. It is a big season, and one big question is on the coaching staff. They've had some turnover in the front office, and they had some turnover with Buck Pierce moving to coach head coach's BC Lions. What do you make of this OC situation currently vacant? Do you think the players would want to know who's going to be running the offense if they're going to be signing a contract there?
Well, one interesting quote that came out of the league's off-season availability from 2 weeks ago via video conference from Charlotte, North Carolina, where the league was hosting its winter off-season availability, or winter off-season meetings, I should say, was Kyle Walters was asked about this essentially. Well, don't you want your OC in place to kind of pitch to players? And what I thought was a rare moment from a CFL general manager, just in terms of frankness, was he said, look, and I'm paraphrasing here, of course, but he said, essentially, I find that the thing that players care about is the amount of money in their offer. And if the number is right, then they don't particularly care who's coaching them, which I thought, okay, first of all, I believe that's accurate 100%. But usually you don't get that kind of candor. Usually get a little bit more of at least a political answer. So I like that from Kyle Walters. I think that this is a very strange situation, Reem. I heard whispers right after Buck Pierce left that Kevin Burgoyne, the team's receiver coach, who had been with the club for, I believe it was 7 seasons under Buck Pierce, was kind of, guaranteed to be the next guy. And obviously that did not turn out to be the case. He has since left the Bombers for the same job with the BC Lions. I believe they gave him the passing game coordinator title as well. So he did get a title bump, but BC also has 2 passing game coordinators on their staff, which is, as far as I know, unprecedented. I've never seen that before. That's kind of interesting. Jarius Jackson, interim head coach of the Edmonton Elks last year, offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach. He had the number 1 offense in the CFL this past season. They were absolutely dominant on the ground, very good through the air, despite missing the playoffs. The problem was their defense was miserable. He is currently sitting at home in Houston, Texas right now, waiting for an opportunity. So the fact that Winnipeg has currently nobody in that offensive coordinator position, and arguably the top guy available is sitting at home, is very strange. I don't know what to make of that. Kahari Jones, I spoke to him a month ago. Since he has since taken a job as the quarterbacks coach of the UBC Thunderbirds. I know that he wanted to be the OC in Winnipeg. That doesn't appear to have been made available to him. I know Marcus Howell, another local guy, was very interested. He's since become the receivers coach of the Calgary Stampeders. So you go down the list of potential candidates, and it's starting to wear thin, but the Bombers don't seem any closer to hiring an offensive coordinator. So a very strange system here in Winnipeg. Frankly, I'm not really sure what to make of it. One would think this team would want to get this dealt with as soon as possible. Mike O'Shea is on the record saying that he wants to hire someone by the time free agency starts. Well, free agency starts in 13 days, and the Grey Cup was over 2 months ago. So this is already a very strangely late hire. Looks like we're going to have to keep waiting.
Keep waiting. We'll stay tuned to 3 Down Nation. All the updates. One more before we go. We're wondering who would be the replacement for Brian Dobie, longtime head coach of the U of M Bisons, but have to be pumped to see Stan Pierre get elevated from defensive coordinator to head coach. Just a quick thought on that before we wind it down here.
Yeah, I think Stan had been with the Bisons for something like 29 years. I mean, he played for them, linebackers coach, very well-tenured defensive coordinator there. There were 4 finalists for this job. I was led by one source to believe that Ryan Carhut would have been the runner-up. I'm also not sure if he could potentially still end up on the coaching staff in some way, shape, or form. He's been on the Bisons coaching staff previously, might make his way back in. Another finalist for the job, Stevenson Bone, has since been hired away from the UBC Thunderbirds to be the new head coach of the Alberta Golden Bears, which I thought was interesting. So clearly some very strong candidates for the Bisons. This is the first time their head coaching vacancy had come up in a very, very long time, with Brian Dobie, of course, being an extremely well-tenured coach there. And I do think that this is a very appealing job for many reasons. I mean, I'm not surprised that they garnered a lot of interest from potential coaching candidates across the country. I mean, this team won Canada West last year, didn't have a great playoff run, but finished atop the conference standings. And this is a tough conference, let's not forget. There are some conferences in this country where finishing top 3 every year is kind of a given, or finishing top 2, dare I say, is kind of a given. Canada West is not like that. There are 6 programs and each of them is capable pretty much any given year of finishing at the top. The Bisons did this past year. I'm sure they're hoping to repeat that this year in 2025. Understand Pierre, only this time not lose at home in the first round of the playoffs.
Well, John, thanks so much for bringing all the great info here. CFL, also U Sports now. Appreciate let everyone know where they can find your work at 3 Down Nation, and if you got anything big that we should stay tuned for.
Yeah, appreciate it. I mean, at 3downnation.com, if you want to bookmark my authors page, everything that I've written on there is there. I believe I just crossed 2,000 bylines, which made me feel a little bit old, but that's okay. Gearing up for February 11th, we are going to be breaking down each CFL free agency group by position and then capping that with a top 25 or 30 players available. So that series has started with quarterbacks and running backs. Tomorrow we'll have receivers and so on and so forth. So make sure you don't miss that.
Thanks so much for taking the time. Always great hearing from you. We got a ton of positive responses in the chat. Thanks a lot, John.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right, there he is. John Hodge, 3 Down Nation. Great website. A lot of CFL action there. We're going to bring in Connor Hrabchak in a second. We'll go through the Coolbet lines. I thought maybe we would have a play of the day here. Hustler sending us in a nice video of him topless at the pool, but we'll spare everyone for one day. But hey, it is time to get to some fan feedback. If you want to weigh in on the Jets win last night, if you think we'll see any fireworks tomorrow against Boston, or if you just want to talk about how great they are, just leave your thoughts in the chat and I'll get to some of them, because your fan feedback today brought to you by Fans First, your best option for buying and selling tickets in Winnipeg with no fees. What you see is what you pay. Certainly the best place. If you have a pair of extra seats, you want to get rid of them, I can tell you as a buyer and seller of tickets on the odd occasion, utilizing Fans First, so user-friendly. The customer service is great, and you're getting paid the next day right after the game. I know they've been busy for January for the last homestand and future home games to come. No doubt about that. Let's see what everyone has to say in the chat here as we talk about, the Jets. Curtis Perkins with the hot take, Velarde greater than Line. And here's Matt Mawura says the idea that a 24-year-old Line eventually turn into getting a 23-year-old Velarde as he hits his prime, and for what I can only imagine will be a cheaper contract. So Gabriel Velarde getting a ton of love here. And as far as the Bombers go, Jeff Cabela said he's worried about the future at quarterback. No worry about this year with Zach Collaros, under center. And I'll do one more read. It's your boy Bruce saying Huss needs to go tarps off at the Bombers game. We'll end it with that. Fan feedback brought to you by Fans First, your number one spot for buying and selling tickets by fans for fans with no fees. Connor, let me bring you back in. How's it been, or what have you been up to here over the last stretch?
Watching the show, enjoying the conversation. Do you have me muted? Am I good? Yeah.
You're on. You're good.
I'm on. I'm good. Okay, sweet. Been watching the show. I like how you gave Ken the gears about wearing the visor there and the mustache. Yeah, the Eric Comrie eyebrow raise. And then, great stuff from John Hodge. There's a lot of question marks with the Bombers right now. And it was really interesting, that comment on how he doesn't think Tyrell Ford will be back with the Bombers. And, that's a player, Canadian corner, played incredible last year, that everyone kind of just penciled in and would be back with the team, or at least you would think that. You would just kind of assume that, right? But, interesting stuff from both Ken and John.
Yeah, all right. It was some great CFL. Who would have thought January 29? But hey, I'm starting to plan my kids' summer camp plans. So summer plans are here, but that does include CFL football. Hey, we did have some interesting NHL news, Connor. Brandon Saad, we talked about him going on waivers, veteran player. We thought he was going to be sent down to the AHL, but how about this? Elliot Friedman reporting a little over an hour ago that Brandon Saad and St. Louis Blues working on a mutual agreed contract termination. He's going to walk away from his remaining salary this season and the $3.63 million in cash he's owed next year. He wants to play in the NHL, and the player and the team thought this gave him the best opportunity to do so. You know, it's hard to want to claim a player like that with a $4.5 million cap hit. Seemed crazy to a guy to be like, no, I don't want $3.63 million, but this guy wants to play in the NHL. I mean, who cares if you're making 3.6 if you're in the A, right?
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I mean, I don't know about you, Remo, but I don't know if I'm going to be faced with any decisions to walk away from $3.6 million anytime in my future.
Yeah.
But like, Brandon Saad is a player that has accomplished a lot in his career and has made a lot of money. So right now he probably just wants to sign with a contender, play a depth role, and play some meaningful hockey late into the season and into the playoffs. And honestly, it is shocking to see a player do that. But when you're a player in Brandon Saad's position, a veteran, 32 years old, had some great years early on in your career with Chicago and things of that nature, like, I don't think he had any interest in going down to the AHL. And clearly walking away from $3.5 million shows that. And I have no doubt in my mind that a contender will pick him up at league minimum salary or whatever they end up agreeing to over these next, 24, 48 hours heading into the break here. And he'll play a key, maybe depth role for a team in the playoffs.
Yeah, just looking at, he's on a 5-year deal, a $22.5 million contract with the Blues. And before that, he did have a 6-year, $36 million contract. So he's done pretty well in his career. Would rather play in the NHL at, close to a minimum salary rather than playing in the AHL for $3.5 million. I think you gotta respect that, certainly. There was one notable play from last night, late night. I don't know if you saw this one, Connor. It was Mark Stone tripped by Roope Hintz, falls into Miro Heiskanen's knee and injures him. Are you a conspiracy theorist that thinks Mark Stone dove into Heiskanen's knee? Everyone wants to get mad at Vegas. Where did you land on that one?
I don't know. Like, I think it's like many internet controversies, it's a little bit in the middle of both. Like, yes, Hintz makes contact with Stone's skate, but Stone still like dives right at Heiskanen's knee at the same time. Like, I don't think the little trip to the skate threw him off that much to where he's diving like headfirst, almost like football tackle right into the knee, right? So yes, some people want to say like, oh, Hintz didn't trip him at all, or that doesn't affect the play. That definitely did affect the play. That's why Mark Stone was going to the ground, but it still looked weird that he just kind of dove right into Heiskanen's knee. Like, it almost like the puck was kind of gone and he just straight at his knee, which again, not going to sit here and say like it was intentional or anything like that, but it was not a hocky play. What Mark Stone
Let's keep right on rolling with stars and gold.
Play what Roope Hintz did, tripping Mark Stone on that play. Sorry. But yeah, I don't know. Where did you land on that hit?
It did look kind of awkward. Like, it did look like a huge trip. Maybe he was trying to fall and brace himself, and he didn't know he wasn't really paying attention to where Heiskanen was. I mean, you could take a lot away from super slow-mo, but I felt like he was tripped and maybe fell in a different direction, but I don't think he was trying to injure Heiskanen. Maybe he was trying to land safely. There are some people in chat. I see Jeff Coldwell thinks Stone dove at his knee, should be suspended. Miller time total accident. Isher Boy Bruce dive for sure. Rob Pepper, Stone dove. Derek McGorn said Stone is the mayor of Greece. People don't like Stone for this LTIR stuff that's happened over the last couple of years. BA wants you to play the hit. I'm not able to play highlights here on YouTube. And that was the auto play as I look up the box score of the game. Shout out to TSN for autoplay on their website. Everyone loves it. But what a great game. I mentioned it yesterday in the Coolbet lines. This was a game against two big Western Conference teams. There was Wyatt Johnson with the natural hat trick OT winner, 4-3 Dallas over Vegas. Coolbet. Here, time for the Coolbet lines. We don't have a play from Hustler tonight, but with the Jets playing tomorrow, he will give us another topless. Well, actually, I can't guarantee if it's topless. Another play of the day. There is the Coolbet Lock Shot Poker Series tonight at 9 o'clock. Link in the description of the video. A couple games. Drew Doughty makes his return for the LA Kings. This is a nice one. Plus 125 on the road against Florida. We have the Flyers plus 158 on the road against the Devils, minus 189 favorites. Nico Hischier, he's week to week. And Jacob Markstrom, he's out, for a couple weeks here after he just had an injury. The Maple Leafs minus 159 favorites over the Wild plus 135. And Nashville home favorites against Vancouver. Nashville minus 147. And Utah HC minus 141. Hosting Pittsburgh is plus 120. Connor, you got a lean or a game that you're going to keep your eye on tonight here on a Wednesday?
Yeah, I love tuning into the NHL on these nights where the Jets don't play, because obviously when the Jets play, we're all locked into that, but you can kind of channel surf when the Jets aren't playing. That Wild Leafs game, I think, is going to be interesting. Austin Matthews just had the comment, and they haven't played a home game since. This is their first home game since he kind of called out the crowd for being too quiet after the Ryan Reeves fight.
Yes.
He said something like, I would have liked to hear a little bit more juice from the crowd. It was a little quiet tonight. Something like that. So it is the first home game since then. Maybe tune in, see if Leafs fans get the message. But I think the most interesting game of the night in terms of like two great teams is the Kings versus the Panthers. Drew Doughty's back for the Kings. The Kings have been great all year long. One of the best defensive teams. The Panthers, obviously one of the best teams in the East. That game could be like a bloodbath and like have a playoff feel to it. Even though it's like opposite conferences in the Kings and Panthers, they just both play that style where it's just a playoff style of hockey. They're very physical, very predominant on the forecheck as well. So that Leafs game for, the crowd and all the library jokes of Scotiabank Arena, I'm here for. And then the Kings Panthers, I think, is the best matchup of the night.
The Leafs game will be on Sportsnet because they're playing a division rival. Leslie Mitchnick in chat says, man, you mean I have to cheer for the Leafs tonight? And yeah, if you want the Jets, they're chasing the Jets. So yeah, we're all Leafs fans tonight. I got my Austin Matthews jersey in the closet with all of them. So yeah, go Leafs, go Leafs, right? How about this one, Vancouver and Nashville? I don't know what's going on with Vancouver. Jim Rutherford making the comments yesterday in the Globe and Mail saying that they're going to have to do something about so what do you say? It certainly appears there's not a good solution that would keep this group together. What's going to happen with Elias Paterson and JT Miller? I did see a Nashville reporter on X try to ask JT Miller about the comments, and he wasn't going to say anything. I think they're done talking about it. Like, how bad can it really be? But it's certainly affecting the team and going to lead to some change. And for a team that had such a great year last year, it's got to be disappointing. After not a lot of playoff success, it's got to be disappointing for it all to fall apart over some pettiness, some grade school stuff. What is this? So I think you got to value the great culture that that they have here with the Jets after going through kind of something similar years ago. It's just strange. These are grown men. They can't seem to get along, Connor. Making millions of dollars.
Making a combined $20 million USD annually. I don't know. The comments there are ridiculous. I see Canucks fans online also complaining because the Canucks just won 2 straight games and looked great in both of them. And now their team president, Jim Rutherford, came out and is basically reigniting the fire between Paterson and Miller. But the Canucks just need to end this. They need to take the best offer on the table that they have for JT Miller that he'll waive his no move for and just get this over with. How long are you going to let this linger? Are you going to wait until the trade deadline, till the offseason? You're just going to lose the season? I don't know. It's pretty ridiculous what's going on in Vancouver.
Okay, here's Alex Doherty on X posting this interview with JT Miller here. He doesn't look like you're after practice. You probably hate these people coming in your locker room. You're in the small visiting locker room, asking you questions about how much I don't know, you don't like your teammate. Here's JT Miller. Shout out to Alex Dougherty on X.
What's your reaction to Jim Rutherford's comments yesterday or this week on the situation with you and Petey?
I don't have one.
You don't have any comments?
No.
Is there still all good between you two guys?
I'm not commenting on this.
All right, so he's not going to comment. He's done. And I always think about this in real world context. Say your boss came out and told a reporter that you guys can't get along. What do you think about this? So he seems pretty tired of dealing with all that. We'll see what happens. We're winding it down, Connor. I don't know if you saw this yesterday, but there's going to be a big fight. March 27, streaming on HBO. Jake Paul versus Logan Paul. Will you be hosting a watch party for this one at your house?
Remo, I still remember us watching Mike Tyson, Jake Paul at the Grey Cup in Vancouver at the BC Lions watch party. And it was like Netflix was buffering. It was a terrible fight. No, I will not be hosting a watch party. I'm not going to tune in. I'm saying it right now. Why would I convince myself that I'm going to tune in? I'm not. Are you going to host? Maybe I'll show up if you host.
Man, I think this is something I'd rather watch. Maybe watch alone if I have nothing better going on at home.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think like Jake, like people, you can rip him as a fighter, but people watched his fights. People did tune in on Netflix. BA Split says it's a time waster. I'm here for that. He did make a lot of money. People paid attention. I think, I don't want to say he lost any credibility because I don't think he ever had any. As a fighter, people just want to see him get beat up. But I guess he just puts on these fights that are sparring matches for entertainment purposes. And if you're hoping for knockout or anything, you're not going to see it. He only puts himself in positions where he can win. I think we're probably better off ignoring it. And I think people kind of just make fun of him now fighting geriatric opponents. So I don't know. I guess Logan Paul was in WWE before. I don't believe he is anymore. I think he was actually pretty good at the whole pro wrestling thing, but seemed to be doing this. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't know if people are going to pay attention, if people care, but it's certainly interesting in terms of business for business purposes.
Yeah. What night was this again? What's the day on it? You said March 27?
March 27.
Yeah. If there's one single NHL game on that night, I will not be watching this fight. It could be like Ducks, Sharks. Lock me in. I'm watching that over this fight. The worst hockey game possible, I'd watch over that fight, personally.
Ducks, I was tuned into Ducks Kraken last night. That was actually a pretty good game, Ducks Kraken. Okay. Doing some pre-scouting. I see a lot of Kraken showing up on the trade target boards. Well, Connor, this has been fun. Here, I'm enjoying the comment. T-Well says this isn't sports, but it is sports adjacent. I'm all about the sports adjacent conversation. That's why I'm here. I'm not here to talk sports, just sports adjacent. Well, Connor, thanks for coming on. It was great talking with you. We did a little sign or skip there about the Jets free agents. They got some interesting offseason decisions, but before the offseason, you got to play the rest of the regular season. Tomorrow, Boston, last night, Montreal. Thanks again, Connor, for coming on, and great having you, and we'll do this again tomorrow.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm fired up for tomorrow's show. Big game against the Boston Bruins, another Original Six opponent. Like Ken Wiebe said there, could be some fireworks because there was last time, and the Jets beat them 8-1, and Boston knows it. So I think we're going to see a desperate Boston team with some fight, and it's going to be a great game, and I can't wait to break it down more tomorrow.
Yes, 100%. Connor, thank you for hopping on. Thank you, everyone, for the chat, tuning in, everyone on the podcast listening as well. Hey, we're going to wind it down. We'll send you over to someone else. We will be back here tomorrow at 1 p.m. Central Time. Dan Robertson, he'll be calling the game for the Jets on TSN. He will join me for some more conversation. All right, for Michael Remis, Connor Hrabchak, that's it for another edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure you're following us on all the social medias. Links in the description of this video. Talk to everyone later on. Bye-bye.
Oh, my God. Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.